and we'll get through that part of it, and then we'll have the parties introduce themselves so that it's on the record as well, since the hearing is live and is being recorded. So first of all, my name is John Mathias. I am the presiding officer. I'm the provincially appointed member of the composite panel, and so I'll be the presiding officer today. I'm joined by two local members.
Renee Clements.
Rob Bennington.
Thank you. First of all, before we go any further, are there any objections to the panel members as we're constituted this afternoon from either party?
There are no objections from the complainant, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. No objections here either.
Okay, fine, thank you. We've crossed that hurdle, so we're into the hearing at this point. Now, what we'd like to do is to have the parties introduce themselves as well. We'll start with the complainant.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Advocating on behalf of the taxpayer is Northern Property Tax Advisors, and representing Northern Property Tax Advisors is Andrew Izard, I-Z-A-R-D.
Thank you, Mr. Izard. And for the respondent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name's Stuart Dalrymple. I'm representing the town of High River as the appointed assessor for the town.
Okay. And can you spell your name as well, too, for the record?
Yeah. Stuart, S-T-E-W-A-R-T, Dalrymple, D-A-L-R-Y-M-P-L-E.
Okay, thank you. All right. Just a couple of things here, just to keep cell phones muted unless, if you haven't already done so, occasionally they surprise us. We can do it 1,000 times and then we forget once. The other thing is to keep your microphones muted unless you're actually speaking, and that way it minimizes any feedback that we might get. I'm just going to ask the parties if they have a sense of time. How are we doing? We've got quite a building package that's it started out to a certain amount. We have a complaint submission, a respondent submission, a rebuttal. We've got an objection to the rebuttal. We have a response to that, and we have some addenda as well too. So we've got quite a bit of material to go through. How are we going to do for time? Are we looking pretty good, or any concerns about getting this done from either party?
A little bit of concern, Mr. Chairman, but I would say that certainly from the complainant side, the number of pages, while lengthy, probably isn't reflective of the amount of time. The two addenda packages should be fairly quick. It's mostly to provide context to the sales charts that are used. So,
okay, I'm pleased to hear that we're not going to go through every document in there. So we'll use that as background.
Yeah, I think we'll be going through them, but not to the extent of every word on every page. But yes, we'll take you through for a general idea.
And the board always reviews all the evidence in deliberations as well too. So we'll have a chance to go through it afterwards. That will be good, Mr. Dalrymple. Do you have any concerns about time? We don't want to shortchange anybody. That's the thing.
Not a problem at all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, fair enough. Well, we'll proceed. We've got the hearing is till 5 o'clock. We have time till 5 o'clock, so we have roughly 4 hours to get through this. If I'm loath to push people longer because it can be tiring. What we do is important for us to listen to the material, for us to be sharp, for the presenters as well to present their cases to the best of their ability. So we want to make sure that everybody is comfortable. We don't want to rush anybody. If we have to, we'll deal with that at the time. That's something we'll deal with.
I just also wanted to share that because we are live streaming, that any personal information that is shared is actually captured on our YouTube channel. And if anyone has any questions regarding the collection of their personal information, they can contact myself, Jody Hipkin, with the Town of High River.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, are there any preliminary matters before we begin from either party? From the complainant, any preliminary matters?
Mr. Chairman, it really depends, I think, on what the respondent has submitted as a rebuttal. We would object to that, but I think that can certainly be dealt with Not at this stage. If that makes sense, we can kind of address that as we get there. And I assume probably the same for, and I don't want to speak for the respondent, but if they had something related to something as rebuttal, maybe we could address that at that point.
Okay, fair enough. From the respondent?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just the main issue we have concerns with is the complainant's rebuttal. I had some questions about that, the information from that being included in the complainant's submission regarding the subject property. So I don't know when the appropriate time is to talk about that.
I think the logical thing is, first of all, we can't really make any determination on it until we get to that point. We as panel members typically do take a skim through the material in advance just to make sure that we know what the issues are before us and to make sure there aren't any large red flags in front of us or anything like that. But in terms of the details of the evidence that we're going to be hearing this afternoon, we're going to leave the parties to lead us through the evidence and to take us to what they feel is the most important parts, because not every part of the package is going to have equal weight. So we will leave the parties to do that. As far as the submissions from both parties, we won't be in a position to gauge whether the rebuttal is appropriate or not until we've heard both primary submissions from the parties. And at that point, even at that, we'll need to, probably what we'll deal with is we will speak to the parties. At that point, we'll have you, Mr. Dalrymple, since you're on behalf of the respondent, you have an objection to the rebuttal. Then we'll have a response from the complainant, and then we can go through. We will, as we said earlier, we will weigh all evidence for irrelevance in any case, and in terms of whether a rebuttal is proper, it has to be in response to the respondent's submission. So we will deal with it at that point. So there's a few ways we can deal with it, but we want to have an orderly flow to this, so we'll deal with that at that time. Are there any other matters we should be dealing with in advance? Any preliminary matters from either party?
None from the complainant, Mr. Chairman. I believe there is a change in value, though, that the respondent puts forward in their submission. I don't know if this is the appropriate time to speak to that or not.
I think it's up to the parties how they want to deal with it. We can, if you wish to put it forward at this point, Mr. Dalrymple, you can do so. Otherwise, we can do it at the start of your submission. We've noted that we're starting with the roll itself as it stands today shows $7,685,300, and if there's an adjustment on there, I did see that there was a revision on there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, the assessment on the roll, I believe you just said it, sorry. I was looking for the amended. On the roll is $7,685,300. That's the 2024 assessment on the roll. And we'll be presenting in our submission a proposed amendment, and we'll get into those details later. And the proposed amendment is $6,972,248. Or $250. So 6,972,250.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
We'll deal with that, the details of it at the start of your submission as well. So I think that's pretty well it. I think we can go into the submission at this point. We'd like to make sure that we're clear on the issues coming into this as well, because we have the complaint form. The other thing I'd just note is that it appears that the documents have been received by the parties on time. We have a complaint form that came in on time. We have the complainant's disclosure, which was due October 16th, the respondent's disclosure due November 13th, and the rebuttal due November 20th. We believe that those have all been received by the parties, and they've been exchanged between both parties. Mr. Izard, you're nodding as well. You've received the evidence from the respondent. Okay, so
No issues from the complainant on that,
okay,
Mr.
so
Chairman.
the documents are fine in front of us here. Okay, Mr. Eisert, can you start us off with the complaint? Is if we go through the complaint, we had a number of things on there. We had an issue with essentially equity sort of overlaps everything here, but we have there was an issue with vacancy, with the op costs or vacancy shortfall, the non-recoverable, the cap rate, and the office rent rate. And it looks from your submission as though those have been whittled down somewhat. What are we actually looking at with issues, and what numbers are we looking to start with?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're actually dealing with the fact that the overall value has produced the highest office value in the province, from what we can tell. So our general determination is that the assessed value should be no higher than $150 a square foot. Based on, and for office rents, we found that fee simple market rents should be no higher than 14, and that from a capitalization rate standpoint, 8.5. So we're going to take the board through that, and just in general, the assessed value on this property in the aggregate at $260 a square foot is higher, or $256 a square foot is higher than any other office transaction that's taken place in the province.
Okay. All right. So if you want to lead us through your submission then,
Sure.
where are we going to go? We're going to...
Maybe first, before I do that, Mr. Mathias, I would note that Northern was, and maybe I'll just you mentioned this very briefly at the outset. Northern Property Tax Advisors was acquired in whole by Ryan. The forms are still under Northern. I'm here as a representative of Northern while this is cleared up. So it's not the same as you may have been familiar with previously, where a division was purchased of a different company by Ryan. So just clearing that up for the chair.
Just to be clear, as far as the decision that goes out, and the complaint came in under Northern Property Tax Advisors, the decision will go out as the complainant showing as Northern Property Tax Advisors. Correct?
Yep.
That's
correct.
That seems appropriate, since that is the complainant of record that we have. All right.
And in this you'll
ways,
find
but
everything. Yeah, I think previously the challenge was that the other company that you may be familiar with is Altus, and so only a division was acquired. Northern, 100% of everything was acquired by Ryan. So in effect, it's a subsidiary to that extent. But Northern Property Tax Advisors as a decision is perfectly fine.
Fair enough. Thank you for clearing that up. All right. So, Mr. Eisert, we've got your submission here of, I don't know how many we've got. Looks
Should
like
be 194 pages.
194 pages. That's what we've got here. And we're going to mark that as our document C1, just for the record.
Okay.
And then you've got various addenda on there as well, too. You've got a couple of those.
And what I might do, Mr. Chairman, is the more important addenda that we'll probably focus on, which we think is most comparable, is the one that says sub-office transactions or sub-office sales, and that's 236 pages. So if we could call that C2.
That's our document 3A, I think. Okay, so what we're going to do is C2 will be the sub-office or suburban office sales. And Mr. Eisert, you said that's 236 pages?
That's correct.
Okay.
And then the next addenda, which is the downtown office sales document, that is 190 pages.
And we'll mark that as C3?
Yes, please.
Okay, so that's the downtown office. Okay. Okay. I'm just going to cross-reference it here. All right, so we have 3 documents in the works here, and then we'll have you lead us through the submission here.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm going to start with C1. Now, I wasn't able to, my computer was being a little fussy, so I wasn't able to open the one that is currently being shown on the screen, which is the 10,070 pages. So what I can do is I can also relabel my page numbers on my document, so I'm making sure I'm referencing the right one. But I think that this one starts, I think you might have scrolled by it here.
What we can do, since we seem to be, if we're working with different documents, the documents themselves, each one has a page numbering system in it. So if you prefer to just say page, I don't know, 93 of 194, 93 of my document C1 or whatever, then I think we can both, or we can all put there. If that's easier.
Well, I can actually add page numbers into my document, so I'm on the same page, so I can reference both. If you're able to go to the very top of C1, and I can just add page numbers to mine that match that. Just the cover page, and then I can.
Do we want to start with the cover page?
Sure, and then
top of it. Okay. That's page 9.
Page 9
of 644. But you've got 1,070 because we've.
No, that's fine. I'm just gonna start. I'll be able to reference the first page.
I think it might be easier if we're just looking at each individual document, since we've been shuffling things around a little bit. So long as we can follow along, and so long as the respondent can follow along with your submission, I think we'll be fine. And if anybody has any. If anybody gets lost in there, please make a note, raise your hand or something like that, so that we'll take a pause so that everybody can catch up. The other thing as well too is that we will, if anybody needs to take a break, a pause, we'll probably take a break at some point in the afternoon to give people a chance to get a fresh water or something like that. So if you need something, let us know. We want you to be comfortable. All right.
Okay.
All right.
I've added page 9 like in sequence, so at least I'll be able to give both page numbers if necessary to my document.
Okay, we'll get there.
Yeah. So if I could have everybody turn to, sorry, it's just thinking here 1 second. Of course that happened.
And Ms. Dreiser, we're old school here. We've got paper documents in front of us here.
Oh,
it's like the old days.
Yeah.
We got I don't think I've got a highlighter here, but I got.
That might remind you of probably a long time ago when we used to do a lot of that in Calgary.
I certainly do remember that.
Yeah, I may have been notorious, had a bad reputation for that.
Oh man. Carry on.
So just add it. Yeah. So on page. Sorry, my computer is being a little slow. So the summary of testimony is found on page 14 of the combined document, or page 6 of 194.
Page 6?
Page 6 of 194 or page 14 of the combined document.
Okay.
And so the key issue here is that what we have an assessment of the subject property at $256 a square foot. This is a office building located in an industrial park in High River. And it's certainly the complaint's contention that the assessed value of this exceeds any office transaction in the Metro Calgary area, certainly well in excess of $100 a square foot of some of the most prominent investment grade office buildings that have taken place. The subject is 30,000 square feet, so it's certainly not a small office building by any means. And there is no office transactions in the High River market. So absent any transactions, we've looked at transactions in neighboring municipalities to provide some context as to what these properties sell for. We're going to take the board through not only interior images of the subject property, but and locational information, but also photos and interior photos of the comparable sales too. We have looked at the best type office properties, both suburban and downtown, in Calgary to provide some context for recent transactions, and that there is nothing that indicates remotely close to $256 a square foot. So on page 6, you can see there bullet point number 2, we're going to address the market value applied to the subject, where in lieu of any office transactions within the High River market area, we will provide numerous superior office buildings, namely from the greater metro area, illustrating that the aggregate assessed value applied to the subject of 256 is well in excess of what can be considered market value. Now, I would note that in some of the transactions, there are heated underground parkades that don't exist at the subject property. We have not adjusted the sale price to account for those. We have included that as though there's no value to the heated underground parkades, which inflates the number, if anything. So I'll point out some of those. While we can appreciate that Calgary is certainly a different market area, the idea that in lieu of any transactions, the subject would exceed the market value of equivalent Calgary properties by roughly 85% or over $100 a square foot is outside of what would be considered reasonable. We will demonstrate that while there is a distinction between downtown office sales included in the downtown appendix and the suburban counterparts, there is no direct line to suggest a typical market value for a 30,000 square foot office building in High River would command a value of $256 per square foot in the marketplace. We'll provide photos and sales information from Class A and Class AA suburban office buildings, which are considered the best quality properties, indicating that relative to the subject property, that these sales are far superior in terms of their interior and exterior finishings, and indicate that the market value is between $85 per square foot and a top end of $165 per square foot, unadjusted for underground parking garages. The subject does not have an underground parking garage. We'll provide recent market rental evidence, also indicating that the rental rate of $20.50 is in excess of recent office leasing in High River as well, where recent office leasing supports generally $14 or below. We'll demonstrate that the municipality appears to rely largely on the leased fee estate value of the subject rather than what is required under the legislation, which is the fee simple estate valuation of the property in determining the assessed value, which again contradicts the legislation. So firstly, I'm going to jump ahead. So we have the ACA, the complaint form, the grounds, the assessment notice, but I'll bring our attention to what is page 18 of 194 or page 26. And so our subject property was built in 2006. So it's just about 20 years old. It's a single story. I'm sure that the panel members are well familiar with this particular property. And the assessed value for the current year, as was indicated, is $7,685,300 prior to the revised value that is being proposed by the respondent. That calculation is based on page 27 or 19 of 124, or 94, sorry, which is using a rental rate of $20.50 per square foot, a vacancy rate of 4%, an operating cost of $8, a combined reserve for replacements and non-recoverables of 4%, and a capitalization rate of 7.25%. Now, we have recalculated that for you using our template on page 28 or 20 of 194. And what that does is it provides just a linear calculation as opposed to a vertical calculation, so it's a little bit easier to reference as to the impacts of value or what contributes to value. Now, our requested page, if you turn to the next page, you'll just see a title page there or a cover page, and then our requested value is found on page 30 or page 22 of 194. So it's our position that the assessed value should not exceed $150 a square foot. For this, kind of the top end of what the sales transactions look like certainly have similar properties, and we're going to take you to that. Below is a chart. So these are all the A and AA suburban office transactions that, and we'll take you through those. But as you can see, our subject property is in green at 256 as the original assessment for a 2006 constructed property based on a valuation date of July 1st of 2024. The building area is identified as being 30,000 square feet. And we've provided the building size and lot size and year of construction of all of the sales comparables as well. Now, to expand our analysis, obviously, in lieu of there not being any office transactions in the High River area or, quite frankly, in Okotoks either, the only transactions here are what's indicated. So we provided 11 transactions where we're placing more weight on the suburban office transactions, given that they're not in the downtown. We provide the downtown to supplement this information. But the suburban transactions do trade at a premium relative to the downtown office transactions on a per square foot basis. Now, the ones that are identified here, again, the first one is the Maple Leaf Foods property. Now, the transaction occurs in October of 2024, so slightly after our valuation date, and it's $147 or $148 a square foot. Now, for 76,000 square feet, that's 11, and built in 2007, that's for 11.3 million. So more than 2.5 times the area and 11.3 million. Now, in August of 2024, the Blackfoot Corporate Center, built a year earlier than our subject, 40,000 square feet, and that particular one sold for 151 per square foot. Now, in terms of the sales that have occurred that took place before that, certainly we have the Quarry Park Professional Center. This transaction took place in May of 2024 at $155 per square foot. So that's 83,000 square feet, 176,000 square foot lot size, 2010 year of construction. Then there's McCall Court, again, AA classification. So a very good quality building. January 2024, 102,000 feet, 2008 construction, $140 a square foot. MTech, this is probably, this is a bit of a unique one, but it's an A quality building, September 2023 transaction, 37,000 feet. And this kind of helps provide a little bit more context. So this has 37,000 square feet versus our subject at 30,000. It's located fairly close to the Saddle Dome. And 2004, so similar year of construction, the purchase price was $160 per square foot. But as you can see, the purchase price in the aggregate, so for 7,000 more square feet, you get it for $5.9 million. We have a current value of $7.7 million, so, or roughly. So you can see that there's a dramatic difference between our subject property, how it's assessed as a indicator of market value relative to what actual transactions indicate. 2618, which is Hopewell Place, again, AA property. We're going to take you through each one of these. 2006 construction, 80,000 square feet, $106 a square foot. Vintage Park, this is a single-story office building, just like our subject. April 2023, A-class, 2000 construction, 77,000 square feet, and for $93 a square foot. For the next, we have 49 Quarry Park, AA office building. This is an August 2020 or December 2022 transaction, 97,000 square feet, 2013 construction, $163 a square foot. And the next one, Qualico Parkside, this is August of 22, 100,000 square feet, 2013 construction, $168 a square foot. Sundance Plaza, that's in Sundance Business Park, just by the South Calgary Health Campus, McLeod and the Ring Road there, so fairly south. December 2021, 60,000 square feet, 2009 construction, $125 a square foot. And what's interesting is that the purchase price on that one is very similar to what our assessment is, but you're getting 60,000 square feet. You're getting double the amount of area. And when you see a picture of that building, you're going to, it's dramatically better than what we were talking about for our subject property. And so that's kind of it provides a bit of a gut check on, is the $7.7 million figure that we're currently assessed at, or is 256 reasonable in light of the transactions that have taken place? Now, we're not asking that the board look at how the assessments of other property are prepared in other municipalities. That's not what we're suggesting at all. What we're showing is we're indicating sales transactions. These are market indicators that exist that, in lieu of transactions within the municipality, it certainly provides that the assessment of the subject property is unrealistic. The last transaction is the former WestJet head office, now Burnco, just off of Deerfoot Trail. This is 64,000 feet, built in 2000, A-class, August 2021 transaction, $86 a square foot. So that's the premise for how we've looked at this. We've analyzed these to determine that certainly are subject to 256. We pulled all of the transactions with years of construction greater than 2000, and this is the sales that are indicated. We didn't want to use older sales, i.e. ones that are pre-2000, because the year of construction may influence the purchase price. We provided either slightly older year of construction, 2000, or much newer in 2013, and none of them are indicating up to $256 a square foot. And so let us take you through what it looks like on our subject property and some details. Some of you obviously are very familiar with this property. So if you're taking the off-ramp on the QE2, you would have driven by this. It's located just on the northwest corner as we're coming into High River, and you can see that from the orthos provided on page 33. Some street level photos on page 34. And these are some additional photos that are provided from the neighboring properties, as well within the industrial park and the paved parking lot that forms the office building. And then we have some interior photos that start on page 36 and continue on 37. So it gives you an idea as to what this office property looks like on the inside. The degree of finishing, what the space looks like, and we're going to be able to provide you comparative examples to illustrate the degree of finishing in some of the sales comps as well. Relative to the sales comps that we'll be taking you through, I would say that this is probably on the lower quality side than many of the office buildings that we've provided as an example. So I'll take you through the appendix, which starts, so we've provided the cover page of the appendix on page 32, and then obviously the same chart that you'll find, on page 41, my apologies. So on page 41, we have the cover page of the appendix, as well as the chart that we've just gone through on page 41. And so that's the same chart. We're going to see this chart throughout the presentation. You'll probably be tired of this chart by the time everything is done. It's the same chart that exists on our assessment calculation, but it provides context to what we're talking about from a valuation standpoint. And so the indicators there are that when you look at the median sale price, we're at about $110 a square foot. For the average and the weighted average, they're obviously brought up a little bit by a couple of the larger buildings, which is $136 and $137 respectively. Now, I'm going to bring your attention, we're going to circle back to the appendix, but I just want to provide some context to the C3 document. And so that starts on page 42, which is just the cover page, and then I'll show the chart to that as well. Now, this chart you're going to see as well, but this provides some context as to some of the transactions that have occurred. And it does provide some more recent transactions that have occurred in 2025 as well, showing that the market has just continued in the same process. What I would note is that there is only one office building transaction that is over $100 a square foot, and that's Bow Valley Square, which is considered one of the prime leasing locations in downtown Calgary. The remainder of the transactions that are provided are all of an A, B quality kind of level of finishing, and they range in value for sure. This is to provide supplement our suburban office transactions. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on each one of these, but this just gives you further context that 256 is just so far afield from what the transactions are concerned that it's not supported by a rational line of thinking to that value. And so the downtown office transactions are about $75 a square foot. So as I mentioned, there is a premium to the suburban office transactions. And so we're going to focus most of our time on the suburban office transactions to kind of provide more detail as to what those are like. Now, I'm going to bring our attention, I'm going to jump ahead. So I'm going to switch to our suburban office transaction appendix. And we'll come back to this document. So that document, Mr. Mathias, which page does that start on?
We just have it as a separate document here.
Okay, perfect.
So it's
perfect.
We just have it as page 1 of 236.
Okay,
and we
perfect.
did mark that one earlier as the suburban was
C2.
C2.
Yeah. Okay, so if we can move to the C2 document, that one I don't have to add page numbers to. I just wanted to clarify if I needed to.
Sure, that's fine.
So in this document, you're going to find that the first several pages are pretty similar to what we've covered off. So up to page 15 is the same. Up to page 17 is basically the same information that we have. So there's photos of the properties, interior photos as a reference point. So if the board is looking through this later, they can compare the interior with some of the interior images that we've provided for each of the properties. But what I will bring your attention to, and they're going to follow the same format. So on page 18, this is the former Maple Leaf Foods property. Oh, sorry, it does have page numbers there, Mr. Chairman. So that starts at 220, right? So what is the cover page of that one? And I can just make sure I have that so that everybody's working off of the same.
So former Maple Leaf Foods, we just have it as our page 18 of 236.
Oh, okay.
We don't have it.
I'm looking at
integrated into a document. I just want to be sure that the respondent is also able to pick up on it too. So your documents are also, you're also looking at
we are. Thank
same
you, Mr.
pages?
Chairman, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
We just don't want to lose anybody. Okay.
It's just what's up on the screen at the moment has like page 220 of 1070. So I just wanted to, so I'll follow, I'll kind of go with the page numbers that are already here then.
Well,
so
I don't think the assessor has doesn't have the computer screen in front of him. He just has the,
gotcha. Okay.
He has the paper printouts, so that's the way he's going to be going. So it's probably going to be easier. We took the monitor down just so that he wasn't hidden from view.
Gotcha. Okay. So I'll stick with the page numbers that are there, and then that way I don't have to, I just wasn't sure because I'm looking at the combined document on the
I think we're probably best off to do it that way, and what we have as well here to sort of works.
Okay.
As long as we get through it, we'll stumble here and there, but we'll get there. And if anybody is confused, then just raise your hand or something, and we'll make sure that you follow. Okay, let's go with the page numbers in there. The 18 of 236 sounds good to me.
Excellent. So on page 18 of 236, this is the former Maple Leaf Foods building. The sale date is October 21st, 2024. The sale price is $11,300,000, which is $148 a square foot. We have provided it on the chart and then highlighted it. So each one of these will follow the same process, so you'll be able to see which one we're talking about. The land titles and transfers are also included for reference. The rule numbers, if the municipality ever needed to look those up, those are provided as well. On page 20, we've provided images of the property. And you can see, so first off, there is the first image obviously gives you a street view, a street level image of the first building, and then the second building is in the bottom of this. So it's a two building property, north and south building, and you can see what it looks like here. It's 2 stories on page 21. Now, we've also provided some of the interior photos. Starting on page 22. So you can see what the interior of both the south and the north building look like relative to what our subject looks like. And we took a look at those. The floor layout plans are provided on page 23. And each of these buildings is about 48,000 feet. And as you can see there, or the south building is 48,000 feet, top and bottom. The sale document is provided on page 24. And then we've included the assessment summary of what it is, and it's mostly just to provide details about the property. It's not to provide any details about how the property is assessed. We're not looking at how the property is assessed. That is not the concern. It's just showing you what the areas are for the 2 buildings. So the first one is 27,850 square feet. The other one is 48,667 square feet. Both built in 2007, providing some context related to the property. And then the quality rating that's assigned here is a AA, which is which is kind of their highest rating for office buildings. The land title follows on page 26. The transaction details are provided, and I'm not sure why Commercial Edge redacted the ownership name, but I believe it's provided on the transfer document. And you can just find all of those details provided. So, like I said, each one will follow the same process. On page 35, we've also included the corporate search documents for the vendor, as well as for the buyer on page 39 for reference. Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to spend a ton of time going through each one. I'm mostly going to point out what they sold for, some of those details, and the board can kind of spend more time going through those if need be. Is that a reasonable thing to kind of move this along fairly quickly?
Sounds fair enough. Just to guide us through so we know what you want us to know about. We've got all the materials, so there's going to be the things that you really want to hammer home.
Thank you. Yeah. So on page 44, we're getting to the Blackfoot Corporate Center. Now, the Blackfoot Corporate Center transaction is August 28, 2024, $6.2 million for $152 a square foot. And that is highlighted on the chart, as you can see. And then what does this look like? Well, because when we hear this, what is that type of property? Well, similar to our subject, it's a single-story office building. And you'll find that on the following page, on page 46. Just an ortho of it, the bottom photo, and a streetscape photo on the top. And then interior images of the property on pages 47 and 48. And it's pretty similar, I would say, to the subject in terms of the interior finishing. Pretty standard suburban office kind of context. Sale document on 49. assessment details on page 50, just showing the year of construction, size of the building, the quality rating. A2 is the municipality uses A2 in place of A, but it means the same thing. So we're going to skip ahead. The land title documents, those are all through there. Corporate search documents. We're going to skip ahead to the next one, which is these are pre-July 1st. So it was kind of to show that the market really hasn't changed, additional sales. But this is Quarry Park Professional Center, and this takes place on page 66 of 236. And the address and roll number provided at the bottom of that page. So this transacted in May of 2024 for 13, call it 13 million, or $155 per square foot. You can see it highlighted there on page 67, and photos of it on page 68. Now, Quarry Park Professional is on page 68, just to the left of the top photo. So in the top photo on the left of the building, which you'll see that concave kind of atrium. To the left of that, that's the Quarry Park Calgary Co-op. So Quarry Park is considered one of the most desirable suburban office complexes, certainly in southern Alberta. The co-op, Quarry Park Co-op, beside it is what you see on the left, and then several of the office complexes there. We're going to come through these in a moment. This particular building on page 68 also has an underground heated parkade, which you can see just on the left side of the building. You can see the ramp as it goes down in the top photo, just on the left. I believe the mouse cursor is going over that now. And so our purchase price is the entirety of the purchase. We have not deducted value for the underground parkade, of which they all rent out to tenants in the building. But you can see that with this particular building on page 68, that the way this building relative to our subject is obviously a much newer building, plated glass finish, large atrium, and certainly at a transaction at $155 a square foot, certainly illustrates that the subject property at $255 a square foot appears high. The sale document is provided on page 69. On page 70 is just assessment details, constructed in 2010, AA quality, which is the highest rating for suburban office buildings. If I bring our attention to page 81, this is McCall Court. This is a single-story office building like the subject. Purchased for $14.5 million in January of 2024, or $141 a square foot. Highlighted on page 82, 2008 construction, and images of it are provided on page 83. So streetscape photos, similar in context to our subject. Single-story suburban office. Photos, interior photos provided on page 84, and the leasing brochure provided on page 85 with additional details about parking stall count, where there's 314 parking stalls, the layout and interior images on page 87 and 88. Sale document on page 89, assessment details on page 90. So on page 90, you'll see that the quality rating is AA. The three buildings that are on site, 43,900, 43,900, and 14,582, all constructed in 2007. Sale documents follow on page 91, 95, and then corporate search documents on page 100 and 104. I'm going to bring our attention to page 107. This is the MTech building. The MTech building sold in November of 2024. And I just want to confirm that's, sorry, MTech, sorry, it says November 2024, but it actually should say September 2023. My apologies. On the cover page. You'll find that on the chart on the next page. The purchase price is $5,955,000 or $160 per square foot. Now, photos of the building, some of you may be familiar with this particular building, going to a Flames game or coming into Calgary. This is in the Beltline. And on page 109, there's a designated parking area behind the building. And then we're going to take you through some of the photos too. You can see the Shoppers Drug Mart directly across the street. Now, streetscape photos are provided on page 110 of what the quality of construction looks like at the property. Interior on page 111. And this was built in 2004, so it's 3 years older than our subject property. But the interior images on page 111 and page 112. So interior staircases in between floors. We also have outdoor patios similar to our subject property, water features within the property, and elevators for accessibility. And this is a sale at $160 a square foot. Sale document on page 113. Now this also has an underground parkade and 32 surface parking stalls. The construction is concrete. Now the details of the property are provided on page 114. 2004 construction, A quality, $34,750. So from a comparability standpoint, pretty similar to our subject. I think there's a slight discrepancy in the area between what the city assesses and then what the area breakdowns are on a per, but I think it's like 34 versus 37. So it's not a major differential. The next building on page 115. This is 2618 Hopewell Place. This transacted in May 2023 for $8,500,000. This building, similar to MTech, is far superior to what our subject property is. And on page 116, you'll see the where it's highlighted there. Images of the property on page 117. Images of the lobby and elevator levels on page 118. Now, interior photos are provided on page 119. And you can see the lobby and foyer area when you enter the property. Certainly dramatically nicer than what we're talking about at our subject. The interior office finish is set up on page 120. Again, superior to what our subject is. Sale document on page 121. Assessment details on page 122. The quality of the property is as a AA quality. So again, when we're talking about quality of property, AA is the highest rated suburban office building in Calgary. Then you have your A's, B's, C's, etc. And so the total area is 78,361. Land title documents on page 123, transfer 128, corporate search on 134, and transfer on 123, corporate search on page 128 and 134. Now the next one is Vintage Park. This is very similar to our subject. It's a brick exterior versus like a Riverstone exterior, single story office building. and constructed the same year. Or sorry, constructed in 2000 versus 2007. So this is Vintage Park. This is on 42nd Avenue Southeast. Sold in April of 2023 for $93 a square foot, or $7.2 million.
What page number are we on?
This is page 139.
139?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And so when we compare this to our subject, just from a physical standpoint, it's very similar. Again, single story, early 2000s construction. This particular property sold for 7.2. Our assessment is 7.7. It has more than two times the actual building area, and yet the sale price is less than our current assessment. So providing some context, again, as a gut check on our current assessed value. Photos on page 140, sale documents on page 141, and assessment details on page 142. And again, the quality of this property is the A quality, not double A, just as an A. Land title is provided on page 143. Transfer document 146. Corporate search 152 and 156. That brings us to page 160. So on page 60, we have 49 Corey Park. So we have another Corey Park transaction. I would note that in prior years, the city of Calgary would actually separate out Corey Park into its own category of property because of how superior they were, and kind of the top end suburban office buildings. On page 161, we have the details. So transacted in late 2022, 97,000 feet, 2013 construction, $16 million, or $163 a square foot. Photo of the property on page 162. This also has a heated underground parkade. Now, I will bring your attention, we couldn't get a better photo of this, but there's some trees on the left-hand side, and you can kind of see the drive down behind the trees going into the parkade. So there's a few like aspen trees there on the left, and you can see the concrete drive down on the left as well. Now, photos provided on page 163. And on page 164, just some details about the property. Again, AA quality, AA quality, year construction is 2011, 101,000 feet. Now, I believe that 101,000 includes a storage area, which is why we have 97,925. So we didn't want to inflate compress the rate per square foot. So we removed the storage area because they apply like a $5 rate or a much lower rate for that space. So usable office space was 97,925. Now, land title provided on page 165. Transfer document 169. 175 for the vendor corporate search and 179 for the buyer corporate search. Now, we're going to spend a little bit of time on this property on page 183. This is Qualico Parkside. So this one had much more, we were able to find more images in this one. A client of mine is actually based out of this building, and they're the buyers of this building. So we had a lot more photos, but this is generally the quality of any of the Corey Park properties in this area. To the level of finishing is very similar between these properties, and far superior to what we're talking about in our subject. The sale took place in August of 2022. 17 million flat for $168 a square foot. Now, photos of this, the building that we just referenced is just to the right, just to the right of this. But the one that's right in the foreground there, that's the Qualico office. And if we turn to page 186, you're going to see the underground parkade, similar to the other one, but it's just hidden by the trees, which is the mirror image of this property. And you can see that in the bottom photo that we provided. I've just put a red circle around the parkade entrance. And images of the property on page 187. So this is what the inside of these Quarry Park office buildings look like. So I'd like you to keep note of these pages. So if we can flip back for a moment from page 187, I want to bring our attention back to page 14 and 15. So we'll come back here in a second. Just everybody let me know when they're back at page 14 and 15 of 236.
I think we're there.
Okay, so again, page 14, this is what the interior of our subject looks like. And page 15 as well. These are the office finishes and the degree of finish that is in our property. Okay, so when everybody's got a good idea of that, I'm going to take us back to page 187.
Okay.
So this is what the inside of these Quarry Park office buildings look like. And they sold for $168 and $163 and $155 per square foot. And they have underground heated parkades, and this is what they look like on the inside. So we have games rooms. The degree of finishing is much higher than what we have in our subject. You can find on page 188, as an example, what the interior looks like for the office entrances. On page 189, you can see what main floor built out office space looks like, boardroom space looks like, the cafe entrance, and what the staff kitchen looks like relative to our subject. There's a tenant lounge for office tenants, which is where the games room is. So, objectively speaking, our subject is valued at $100 more per square foot than this sale price. The transaction on page 190, details on page 191 for 2011 is the year construction, AA quality, 100,000 square feet. And again, this is the leasing brochure, just providing a little bit more detail about the property. This is from an old brochure, but provides some context all the same. And where those images come from. So you can see kind of some of the tenant incentives with respect to these spaces. So from an investment grade valuation, these office buildings certainly illustrate that our subject exceeds the market value. As a prospective buyer, you'd be willing to pay $168 a square foot for this property, which is newer, a much higher degree of finish. It has tenant amenities to induce leasing. It has heated underground parkade, which our subject has none of the above. And yet our subject is valued at $100 more per square foot than this property. Land title on page 197, transfer on 202, corporate search on 208, and page 211, the corporate search for the buyer. Now I'm going to bring us to page 215, which is Sundance Place. Now I referenced this one previously. This is just south of Fleur, or just opposite Fleur, off McLeod Trail, and in Sundance Business Park, just opposite Shaughnessy, the south end of the city. So this particular property transacted December 7th, 2021 for $7,500,000. Now, again, the purchase price is relevant to our current assessment, in so much that we're valued at around the same value point as to what this transaction is. This purchased for $125 a square foot. The transaction here is provided on page 216 and highlighted. Images of the property are found on page 217. So this is all plated glass. It was built in 2009, so about the same vintage as our subject. It's four stories, and it also has a heated underground parkade, which you can see in the bottom photo on page 217. Just to the left of the tree, you can see the entrance to the parkade, as well as the surface parking out the back of the property. You can see the door there, and then the ticket wicket. I don't know if that's the right term, but as you can see there. So if we turn to page 218, 2008 is the year of construction. 2009 is what we had, but 60,000 square feet, so double the amount of area. Again, we're 30,000 feet, and the municipality is saying that we're worth $7.68 million. This sold with 60,000 square feet, a heated underground parkade, and newer construction for $7.5 million. Now on page 219, you'll see some of the comments for the surface improvements, or for the site improvements, surface and underground parkade as noted. Now the parking rates are $100 per month to $200 per month per stall. So again, details related to what the parking costs are on those. And that's like a benefit that the subject property does not have. Now, the next property, some of you might be familiar with as well when going to the airport. This is located just off of Deerfoot and McKnight. This is the Burnco office building, formerly known as the WestJet head office. Now, on page 220, this sold for $5.5 million in August of 23, and I just want to confirm that date. It should say August of 21. My apologies.
Sorry, what was that? August of when?
21.
21.
Yes. I have it listed as August of 23, but it's dyslexia on the date there. So August of 21. In the chart, it's correct on page 221. Photos of the property on page 222. You'll just see, again, it's a fairly prominent office building when you're heading in the northeast. On Deerfoot, you can see this because of the McKnight overpass very prominently, similar to what our subject has in terms of some exposure to the highway. The sale document is provided on page 223. The assessment detail is provided on page 224, just showing you the year of construction is 2000, the quality is A quality, and the assessed area is 64,000 feet. So double the amount of area and sold for $5.5 million. The land title document, the corporate search documents are provided on page 225 and again on page 230. And so, Mr. Chairman, that provides you some context, at least, as to what each of those sales look like in our chart that, again, appears on our request on page 235. So when we compare it to the subject property, our subject property would be inferior to most of the transactions that we provided. The year of construction probably would be right in the thick of things. I think our average year of construction, median year of construction is 2007 for the sample relative to our subject at 2006. But what we could not do is we could not find any investment grade office buildings like our subject that would illustrate a value in excess of $168 a square foot, which is the prime suburban office buildings in Quarry Park. And yet we're a further $100 a square foot higher than those properties. Now, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to bring our attention to C3 for a moment. And I'm going to spend much less time on this document, but I just want to take us through this very quickly.
Okay.
Now, again, the first 15 pages, Mr. Chairman, are going to be very similar to what we've come out earlier. So in the first 15 pages provide exterior and interior images as well as some maps and the summary of testimony that we covered off in C2 and in C1. So I'm going to go jump ahead to page 17. And so on page 17, I've highlighted a few properties where we provided a summary of each property and sale details for reference. For the other properties listed, the transfer numbers are provided as well as this critical information about each office. But just wanted to take you through a few of these, just as contrast to what we're talking about. So the first example is Bow Valley Square, 1.4 million square feet. It's a complex of 4 different office towers right in downtown Calgary. It's the highest one that's on this list on page 17. Purchased for $144 million. Photos of it are provided on page 19. And so this is one of the iconic downtown office buildings for Calgary. The sale documents are provided on page 20, and it was extensively renovated in 2019, where they invested about $40 million into the office towers for upgrading. Land title documents are provided for reference, but I'm going to skip ahead to the former Nexon Tower on page 48. Now, the transaction on this is May 2023 for $39,240,000 or $65 a square foot. The Nexon Tower photo is provided on page 49. Sale document on 50. I'm going to bring our attention to page 69. This is Encore Place. This sold in May of 2024 for $21,500,000 or just about $60 per square foot. Photo of the property is provided on page 70. Interior images are provided on page 75 and 76. The next building I'm going to bring your attention to is on page 101. This is 525th. And this sold in January of 2024 for $90 a square foot, or $17,500,000. Photo of the building is provided on page 102. On page 121, this is Plaza 1000, and this particular property transacted in May of 2024 for $13,050,000, or $81 per square foot. Photos of the building are found on page 122. This is a West End building. More photos are provided on page 124, and interior photos on page 126 and 129. And then lastly, for the downtown buildings, I'm just going to bring your attention to 635 8th. So 635 8th was purchased in November of 2024. This is on page 167. So this was purchased in November of 2024 for $16.85 million, or $62 a square foot. Photo of the property on page 168. Details are provided on page 169. So, Mr. Chairman, providing that detail again is only trying to illustrate that there is a premium between downtown office and suburban office, but that really the focus of our attention here today is on what the suburban office transactions indicate, which are more similar to what our subject is that even with the premium associated with suburban office buildings, we couldn't find anything that supported $256 a square foot. Nothing in the Metro Calgary area. Okotoks, however, there's been nothing that's transacted anywhere close to this. What we have indicated, though, is we found 11 transactions, 2 that are beyond our July 1st, but within the assessment year, all indicating a very tight range relative to what our assessment is. And our assessment deviates from that materially, and you'll find that on page 189. So on page 189, it's the same chart that we went through earlier. Again, the downtown office buildings are, in addition to, as a reference point, just to show that we looked at as much as we could find. They're much lower than the suburban office transactions, but the focus of where we're providing the market evidence today illustrates that the suburban office transactions, that our subject property in lieu of any sales in High River should not exceed certainly the top end of what the suburban office transactions look like, which would be, the top end is $168 a foot, but the vast majority are sub $150 a square foot. And so our request here today is based on $148 a square foot. We've calculated that using a $14 rental rate, or an 8.5 cap. Really, though, it's to get to that $150 per square foot value, which we believe is where the value of this property should not exceed, given the sales information. And when you compare what the options are to an investor in the marketplace, if from a fee simple standpoint, if a prospective buyer is looking at buying a property with more square footage, newer construction, heated underground parkades for $150 a square foot in the Calgary market, it would be difficult to fathom a scenario that would involve acquiring this site for $256 without any of those benefits in a smaller market like High River, where it's more difficult to get financing on commercial property like the subject. So that brings us back to C1. And I want to bring our attention to, so page 37 is that page 189. So again, the same chart that we've covered off is just part of our request page. So I'll get everybody to switch to C1, please.
Okay, what page in C1?
Page 37. So you're going to go from the same page. You're basically going to the same page, but in C1.
37. Right? So, same chart.
Yeah, same chart. Same chart. So just kind of, we're going from one to the other. I've talked about it already. So without kind of belaboring this point, if we'll move to some of the leasing examples. So what we did is we looked at leasing examples in the municipality. So we'll turn to page 38 and 39. So we also tried to do a check on the current assessment, which is at $20.50. What we found, in certainly the information that was provided to us by Avis and Young, indicated that lease rates of $12 and advertising for lease rates at $14 is what we could find in High River. Now, obviously, there's a limited supply of new leases that would be available in High River. So we also extended that, looking at Okotoks. And we looked at other office leases in Okotoks, and what we could find was the bottom chart. Now, that was looking at the Okotoks Professional Building, as well as Bighorn Place. Bighorn Place is newly constructed in 2017. The Okotoks Professional Building is older, certainly, but the rates were, we couldn't find anything that would support a typical rate of $20.50 anywhere. Now, so in looking at that, the only rates that are recent indicate in that 12 to 14 range, whether in High River or Okotoks, as a typical market rent, Mr. Chairman. So that's what we've provided here from a leasing component as an indication of what market lease rates look like in the area. So we couldn't find, again, and these are much smaller leases too, like 700 square feet, 1,200 square feet, 2,500 square feet. We have a 30,000 square foot office building here as well. And the lease on this property is very dated. So it's not, we're obviously trying to look at the fee simple estate on the property and not the leased fee estate on the property, which is why we've looked at more recent leasing to try and piece together whether or not the $20.50 is reflective of current market conditions, or if it's simply just an attempt by the municipality to apply the subject's rent. From that, Mr. Chairman, we could not find support for how we got to how it was arrived at $20.50. And that's on page 39. Just as a photo of Bighorn Place, you'll find that on page 40 and 41. And I would note too, Bighorn Place, the vast majority of the building is vacant, in the sense that they haven't been able to find any tenants because there's a limited demand for office tenants. That being said, it's a 2017 constructed property. Some of the panel members or yourself may be familiar with this property if you spend some time in Okotoks, located right by the Costco off South Bank. So that's how we've arrived at this conclusion. And on page 43 of 194, again, looking at our calculation, what we've done is we've taken the top end of kind of those rates that we could find at $14, how do we arrive at a rate close to 150? And it's really, if the sales kind of indicate top end 150, if we're getting $14 a square foot, what does that look like from a cap standpoint to arrive at something close to $150 a square foot? And that's how we've approached this value. We've also provided an alternate calculation for you on page 45. Now, on page 45, we found rates of $12.50 if we're looking at Okotoks as an example. As a result, though, Mr. Chairman, our conclusion's roughly the same. We've just compressed the cap rate from our request on page 43, which is reflective of $8.50 down to $7.50 because we've changed the lease rate. The idea here is that overall, the value should not exceed $150 a square foot, Mr. Chairman. Just in lieu of any sales transactions, we couldn't find support that would demonstrate any sort of value beyond 150, and probably 150s on the very conservative and reasonable side of things, in light of a lot of the sales transactions that are well below 150 a square foot and given our location. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that would conclude our presentation on the evidence. And as you can see here on page 45, we've just shown you where, if we look at the $12.50 and the $12 a square foot, 14 was a listing. Again, just demonstrating that we don't know where the $20.50 is, and we look forward to any sort of leasing study that the municipality puts in to support how they've arrived at $20.50. So, subject to any questions, Mr. Chairman, that would conclude our presentation in C1, C2, and C3. Our request is that the board revise the assessment to no greater than $150 a square foot. How we get there, whether it's just 150 times 30,000 square feet or using the income calculations, we just believe that the value overall should not exceed $150 given the sales evidence, rather strong sales evidence indicating the contrary, that 256 is just not supported in the marketplace. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Reiser.
And I hope that was fast enough for everybody given the number of pages.
Well, we did a fair bit of flipping pages, so we we'll have a little bit of reading to do afterwards, but that's fine. We understand where you're going here. So, all right, turn it over to the respondent for any questions.
No questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
No questions. Well, that was quick. We're really moving along here. Okay, questions from the panel? None? No. None? Wow. Well, somebody's got to have a question here. So, all right. So I just want to be clear. No, we do.
I just have one request: if we could have a quick break.
Okay.
A bathroom break.
Right. Okay. Well, let me just ask this for clarity, and then we'll take a break.
Okay.
Okay. Good.
Thank you.
All right, so I just want to be clear then that when we're writing this decision and when we're going through it, that what we're looking at is issues in terms of rent and cap rate. Those are the two. Really what you're saying to us, it sounds as though you're trying to get to a number of roughly 150 a square foot. And so whether you showed us two different ways here, one way at 14, your primary request is at 14 a square foot and an 850 cap. Your alternative on the page 45 showed 1250 a square foot with a 7.5 cap. So basically both taking us to the same point. Is that really what you're trying to get across here?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, can you hear me? I got disconnected somehow.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
Sorry, you were saying something about cap, and then I lost you.
What I wanted to be clear on is what our issues are really in front of us here. And the issue is the overarching side of it, from what we can see, is equity with other properties, other office properties. And you're saying that 150 a square foot is your number where you're trying to get to. You showed us on page 44 or something like that, showed us the chart with $14 a square foot and an 850 cap. And then you showed us on the next page using 1250 a square foot with a 7.5 cap, both taking us to effectively the same rate. That's really what you're trying to do with these? Is that what it is?
Yes and no, Mr. Chairman. I would modify maybe the question a little bit, if I may. That I'm not saying from an equity standpoint, because we don't have assessments of other similar office buildings in the municipality. So I'm not talking about how the assessments are from an equity standpoint. It's mostly from a market value standpoint. So I would say that the overall arching principle is that as a suburban office, there hasn't been any transactions that support in excess of $150 a square foot, and certainly not beyond 168. What we've come to is, in looking at this, we believe that the value shouldn't exceed $150. From that, we saw leasing, 12 to 12.50, 12 to $14. If we applied $14, then we'd need an 850 cap rate using the same vacancy to come out to $148 a square foot, $149. If that rate was 12.50, obviously we'd be looking at the cap rate change would only be just minor to 750 to come out to a similar outcome. The idea is that the assessed value as a whole is in excess of what could be regarded as market from the transactions that have taken place, and in lieu of any office transactions that have occurred in either High River or Okotoks that would demonstrate the market value for this property. I hope that provides some context, Mr. Chairman, or helps clarify that response, because we aren't looking at the how, like, quite frankly, I don't think the municipality cares either how the assessment is prepared in Calgary. And we're not trying to suggest that High River assess as they do in Calgary. The point is that from a market transaction or market level, there isn't any transactions that demonstrate in excess of this figure of 150 when looking at the sales that exist.
Okay, that's fair enough. And the only thing on your chart that you show us where you separate out two at the top, those are just post facto sales. Is that what it is? Why those two at the top?
That's correct. Yeah. So and it was mostly just to show that it wasn't like there was anything. There wasn't something that came in August or October that was dramatically changing the outcomes. It was, they're fairly consistent. So those properties that do transaction, like if I was looking at probably the best comparables, the Maple Leaf Foods, Blackfoot Center, those are, and probably Vintage Park are probably the most comparable from, your single or your two-story type office properties, if you will. Same with McCall Court. And so all of those, when you look at those ones independently, $150 would be on the top end of that range.
Okay, that's good. Those are my questions. We will take a break at this point. Well, it makes sense before launching into the other presentation as well. Anyway, so it's a timely point. How long do we need? Do we want to take a 10-minute break or something so that we have a chance to just sort of decompress a little bit, and then we start into the other side? Okay. So it's about 20 to 3 roughly right now. Why don't we come back at about 10 to 3? Does that sound good? Fair with everyone?
Sounds great.
Okay. All right. We're in recess until 2:50. Thanks.
We're supposed to be back at 2:50, so
Well,
I
yeah.
was
Well, yeah.
oh,
That's right at that time.
right on time.
Okay, so we're back. It's actually 2:51 on my watch here. So we're back in session. We're going to start with the respondent submission. Now, there's two of you here, and Mr. Dalglish, you said you're the one who's going to be driving the vehicle. You've got a colleague here. Is your colleague an observer or?
Yeah, I got with me Brandon Garner. He's the other assessor here in the town of High River.
The assessor in High River?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
So we look after the town together. Yeah.
Okay, so you're both going to be speaking, or?
No, just me. Brandon's my mental support person.
Oh, okay. Okay, so just whether we should include your colleague in the decision in there as an observer, or?
Sorry, say that again.
Just that you're going to be shown as an observer in there, or we can leave you out.
Yeah, I'd be more of an observer.
More the observer,
Okay.
yeah.
So can we get
keep me organized here, yeah.
can you give your name for the record, because we didn't do that before?
Yes, my name is Brandon Garner, Brandon, Garner, Garner.
Okay. Just going to
And
show
then
you as an
I'm
observer.
an assistant assessor.
Okay. Okay. We just didn't want to leave anybody out. So, all right. So we're going to start with the respondent submission at this point. We have a document of, it doesn't say how many pages here. 70 pages. Looks like 70 pages. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so we're going to mark in your document as document R1, and that is 70 pages. And please proceed and take us through whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the panel, and anyone else in the gallery. I've got a bit of a cold, so just bear with me. I'm a bit croaky, so I'll try and do the best I can here. We appreciate the opportunity today to respond to the complainant's disclosure regarding 1010 24th Street Southeast, roll number 4460100, owned by Collective Assets, sometimes referred to as the Western Financial Building. It's on 3.61 acres. The zoning is Service and Employment District. It's an administrative office. Your built is 2006. It's a building of 30,000 square feet, and the current assessment is $7,685,300. The base year for our assessment is 2024. So page numbering, I'm going to use my page numbering on my disclosure just for that purpose, if that's all right. I only have the one package here. So page 9 shows a picture of the Western Financial Building from the road, and then the other pictures are from our pictometry information. So the one at the bottom is from the northeast, shows the building and parking on that parcel. On page 10, it's a photo from the southeast, looking at the building, and then the one at the bottom is from the southwest. On page 11, it shows kind of not all High River, but it shows the subject property relative to downtown, where we are right now, just west of that yellow line, and where Western Financial is, just close to the highway there. And the one at the bottom is just a Google map showing you where it is. So I'm just going to make some quick references to legislation. As you know, assessment is very heavily regulated. So, of course, we follow the Municipal Government Act and MRAT, matters related to assessment and taxation. We're looking at property assessments represent an estimate of value, fee simple ownership, typical market conditions. At the bottom, we're talking about market value. So 284.1R, what a property might be expected to realize if it is sold on the open market by a willing seller to a willing buyer. So we're looking at the typical market. Market value is our goal, to be within a reasonable range. Each assessment must reflect the condition of a property as of the end of the year. The valuation date is July the 1st, 2024. And we are required to value all properties using mass appraisal. so that all properties are regarded similarly. We develop valuation models that are statistically tested, that must pass audit. And our quality standards for the property we're talking about today are for each group of properties from 95 to 105%. So I'm going to make, if you don't mind, Jody, if you could go with me to page, just a minute. Page 67 in my addendum. There's just some other legislation I'd like to cover with you before we go ahead. So page 67. So I guess the reason I bring this up is that we are talking about property in High River. That's our responsibility and what's in our purview. So according to MGA 284, section 2.1, the municipality must appoint an assessor, a person having the qualifications set out in the regulations to the position of designated officer to carry out the functions, duties, and powers of a municipal assessor under this Act. So I'm appointed assessor for the town of High River. Brandon Garner is the assistant assessor. Our focus and our responsibility is the assessment in the town of High River. We're not the appointed assessor in Okotoks or Calgary, just to make that a statement. So the appointed assessor, further down the page, only has a jurisdiction and responsibility and authority to conduct the following within the municipality as appointed: prepare, amend, or defend the assessment, accountable by legislation to provincial legislative requirements, to council and respective bylaws specific to the municipality and to the property owners. We do that every year for every role. Does not have the jurisdiction or authority to, outside of the specific appointment, to act as an appointed assessor in a municipality not appointed to do so. Obtain assessment data calculations, models, or coefficients from another municipality. Gather information from property owners. We can't do that in another municipality. Have influence over the preparation of assessments, or incorporate data from another municipality into its sales analysis and methodology. And I should add, there is no requirement provincially or legislatively that we are required to have equity between this municipality and any other municipality. We are required to have our assessments at market value and be equitable, and consistent in the town of High River. So I'll just move on. Page 15 is just kind of thrown in there. We're required by legislation to have a reinspection cycle. So every 5 years, we're required to make sure that the data we have on all the properties in town is up to date and correct. That's just to say that's a requirement. On page 16, we talked to the valuation, the approaches to value. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this. The direct approach is typically for residential. Income approach is what we're going to be talking about today, and the cost approach. So on the income approach, I'll just read the bottom there. It says the estimates of value are determined using the income approach, estimated from market data gathered specific to High River, and in accordance with the requirements as set out by provincial legislation. So the premise being that the value of property in High River is determined from the income it generates in High River. So turn to page 17. We're just kind of going to go through the steps of the income approach, just so that we're all on the same page. So the steps that we take, one of the big ones we take, and as the appointed assessor, we send out requests for information to property owners, to the non-residential properties every year, and we request them to share their lease information in High River, and typically it's the properties that are being leased. So they would say who it's leased to and what the lease is per square foot for like the annual square foot lease. We make sure the property data is correct, so that's part of the reinspection cycle. And annually, if there's any new development, we make sure that best we can the non-residential properties are up to date. We gather the income data from the request for information, so that's confidential. We don't share everything we have to anybody else, or we'll only share lease information for a situation like this, where possibly a property is under appeal. Otherwise, it's confidential. If it was open to the public, we wouldn't get that information. We analyze the market data. We make sure that we're recognizing market trends. We're being aware of comparable sales and comparable leases. And then from the gathering of that lease information, we determine typical lease rates for certain buildings. And that just gives us a foundation and a framework from which to assess the buildings based on the income approach. We make adjustments specific to vacancy, operating costs, non-recoverables, and reserve for replacements. And we apply a uniform capitalization rate for each group of properties, so that similar properties are all assessed the same way and being cognizant of market value standards in High River. So the income approach is best suited for determining the most appropriate estimate of value within this municipality, as it most closely represents local market conditions specific to High River. This approach to valuation is the most responsive to changing market conditions, and when used in the process of mass appraisal ensures the equitable and consistent valuation of similar groups of properties. Now, I just want to mention there's a lot of reference made to value of a property per square foot. I want to say that's not how we're required on the income approach to valuation. That's not how that approach to value is built. It's built on the lease rate and all the various components in which we've talked about on page 17. And I just pulled a quick Google on if using the value per square foot is an appropriate for the income approach to value.
Which page are we on?
17.
And sorry, where's the reference to Google? Are we introducing new information is all I'm asking.
Well, okay.
No, I think he's just...
Okay, I don't have to, I'll just, it's irrelevant, I'll cover it another way, it's okay. So,
Okay.
we don't use the value per square foot to develop a value to build the assessments for each group of properties on High River, nor are we audited by the province on a value per square foot. And I'll get into that as we proceed through this disclosure, through the response. So it's a quick method to compare, but it's not the way that the valuation is built in High River or anywhere. That's not how the income approach works. So turning to page 18, just the difference between single property appraisal and mass appraisal. So single property appraisal is valuation of one property for many different purposes. The valuation date is determined by the appraiser. Usually 3 to 5 properties are used as comparables. It's close in location, style, quality, and construction to the subject property as possible to arrive at an estimated value based on comparables used. Mass appraisal is different because we're valuing an entire group of properties for taxation purposes. The valuation date is set provincially for July the 1st, condition date December 31st. A valuation is developed for each property group with a similar style and quality of construction. An equitable and consistent estimate of value is derived for each property group, which is then statistically tested for accuracy. So we're valuing groups of properties. Whether the group is 2, 5, 20, whatever groups we have in the municipality, those are the rules of mass appraisal. Well, not the rules, those are the guidelines of mass appraisal. That's how we conduct our work. So the primary goal in assessment is a level of market value and fair process, not a pinpointed single property appraised value. The general concept is that if everyone's property value is calculated the same way, using the same uniform methods and techniques, while using sale prices within the municipality's benchmark, then level of market value, that's our goal, typical market value will be achieved and the tax distribution should be fair and equitable. So I'll just turn to page 19. This is just a quick method, just a quick guide as to how this assessment process, mass appraisal, looks like. So for every property that sells, if we take the assessment divided by the selling price, we get an assessment to sales ratio. So for any group of properties, that collective ratio should be between 95 and 105%. So the graph you see at the bottom of the page, That's all. That represents all the sales in High River. Each red line in there, they're all kind of bunked together close. There's 1,238 sales, and each red line represents the assessment divided by the selling price. And the median ratio of all of those, there's many models for all the houses, and for the different, for non-res, it's res. Res, multifamily, commercial, industrial, and vacant land. They all have a different cap rate. All the various models, and they all have to meet the statistical test of being between 95 and 105, and we always aim for 98. So there it is right there. That's our statistical test overall. That's the whole town, just to show you that what the quality standard we have to meet for audit standards. And we'll show what this is for the non-residential group later on. So turning to page 20, it just shows the assessment to sales ratio relative to the selling price. Just shows you the clustering of those sales around the median. And at the bottom one, it shows the relationship between assessment and selling price. So that bottom graph is a good one because it's not a straight line. It has a range of value, and we're required to be within that. And we'll show you that the amended assessment we've proposed is going to use that rational thinking of we are using an estimated value, and we've made an amendment being cognizant of there's a range of value, what's appropriate, right? So that's what we've done. The next page, 21, is just our report from Asset, and shows that we met the quality standard for the province. So I'll turn to page 23, if you don't mind. Summary of testimonial evidence. So some property facts. The subject property consists of 3.61 acres along 24th Street in the south portion of High River Industrial Park. Just a second, please. It's in the service and employment district, zoning with and as illegal, 0513629, block 7, lot 3. It's a 30,000 square foot administration building with a mix of executive office spaces and boardrooms with open areas housing cubicle office spaces. So this just shows the relative location of the subject property. The next page, on page 24, this shows the income calculation based on what we discussed previously, like the criteria for using the income approach to value. Sorry, I'm flipping back here. What page was that?
That was 17.
17. Yeah. Thank you, Brandon. There we go. So these are the components of the subject property. It's a 30,000 square feet. The lease rate used is $20.50. We've made an allowance for vacancy, operating costs, 2% for non-recoverables, 2% for replacements, and a cap rate of 7.25 to arrive at the assessment of $785,300. So those are the elements that we use for the calculation of the subject property. Now, the $20.50 in this context is the lease rate specific to the subject property. These other components, vacancy, op cost, non-recoverables, and the cap rate, these are part of the mass appraisal process. We have a group of properties. The lease rate is quite specific to the property or the use of the property based on the lease information we get. And these other elements, well, certainly the cap rate, that brings all these properties together, and the cap rate is a representation of the local economy. That's derived from local sales, and we'll address that later. So that cap rate, I've heard cap rates of 7.5 and 8.5. We use 7.25, and that's based on High River sales. It's not I think it might be 8.5. I think it might be 7.5. 7.25 is what we used, and it's been proven, and it's been passed for audit. So that cap rate is specific to High River, and it's been passing audit states that it's correct for High River in the master appraisal process. So page 25, originally the assessment review board complaint stated the requested assessment was $6,250,000. On page 26, the requested assessment was $4,440,800. That was using, I think that one's at $14 a square foot. And on page 27, the requested assessment is practically the same, just less $800, so $4,400,000 even. So the requested assessment for one is $14 a square foot with a cap rate of 8.5, and the requested assessment for the other one is a lease rate of $12.50 with a cap rate of 7.5. Did I say 8.5? 7.5. So as we go through the respondents, I have no evidence to suggest that $14 a square foot or $12.50 a square foot for the subject property is appropriate. And no evidence either to support the different cap rates. We use a consistent cap rate for the non-res commercial properties in town, and we'll show you how that's been calculated. We'll provide evidence to show the lease rate and cap rate used in our disclosure is appropriate and based on market evidence. So on page 28, I'm going to walk you through the process we used for calculating an amended assessment. So I always appreciate talking to the complainant about property assessments. It's good to be reminded of certain aspects of the assessment and what things might affect value, and that it may require a broader view of things that affect the value. So we decided we'd do that, right? Well, let's take a look at this assessment. And if I'm going to bring it to the board, I want you guys to know that we gave it some serious consideration and not just come here with saying, well, we're right. So we want to show you that we walked through this process and used logic and rationale in our decision. So we want to review the indicated value specific to the subject property. So the information used for the current assessment is based on information we received regarding from the property. So we've got, I want to go for, the first thing we looked at was, we mentioned we receive, send out requests for information and receive responses from the property owners. We have a request for information here. It was returned. The date on here is May 7th, 2024. This was sent to us from the property administrator. And the property administrator has stated that if you look where it says 1A, so the building size is 30,000 square feet. The lease is from the June the 1st, 2006 to the 30th of November, 2028. And that lease rate is, well, it says here $20.48, but when you take the 51,928.75 times 12 divided by the building size, it's actually 20.77. But that's just pennies. That's just for the calculation. So that's the lease rate that the owner says that it's been leased for. And then additionally, we ask on our request for information if the owner has an opinion of value or if they've had a recent appraisal for value, and the owner states they had an appraisal for the evaluation of the asset, March 1st, 2022, for $7,900,000. So these are what we call indicators of value. That's what, when we submit sales to asset or the province for audit, that's what they're called. We call them, well, those are indicators of value, but I'm saying these are indicators of value specific to the subject if we're looking at making an amendment. So I'll turn to page 2. Received an appraisal from the complainant. The appraisal is dated for July the 1st, 2024, which happens to be the valuation date for assessment. The appraisal says, and I'll just read it, it says, at your request, we completed a comprehensive narrative appraisal report consistent with appraisal of Canada guidelines in order to estimate the current market value of the above referenced property based on the analysis contained herein. The market value of the property, subject property, is effective July 1, 2024, and estimated to be $6,860,000. So that's another opinion of value used. And I'll be the complainant does talk about leased fee interest, and I'll speak to that later when we get to the sales in the cap, when we talk about the cap rate. And then on page 30, this property did sell. It sold the 2nd day of September 2022. It sold with another property. So the second parcel here is a subject property. And it sold with another property located in Tabor. So I did reach out to the assessor for Tabor. I did and got the assessment for that building, because it's an estimate of value, but the value on the roll for that building is $971,000. So we take the gross amount of this sale at $8,738,012 less the $971,000. The net value for this property sale is $7,767,012. And while this is an indicator value and one sale doesn't typically make a market, the sale price generally is a pretty good representation of what that property is worth on the open market. So that's just, so this property did sell. So on page 32, we've provided a summary of the indicators of value. We've got the valuation of the asset on March the 1st, 2022 for $7,900,000 with a market lease of $20.77. We've got an appraisal by, what's the company? Avison Young Valuation of $6,860,000, dated July the 1st, 2024. And we've got the sale less the property in Tabor for a net value of $7,767,012. So those are the indicators of value we have for the subject. So that being said, we'll show later we did make an adjustment to the lease rate, right? We've changed it from $20.50 to $19.50. We'll show you the calculation for that in a few pages. And we did make and that's based on looking at similar properties in the municipality, and should we make, is the lease rate, is the lease rate, like, we have to look at using some reasonableness, like using like what is a middle value, or what is a typical lease rate based on information we have. And same for vacancy. We want to make sure we're being consistent with similar properties. So the lease rate was changed from $20.50 to $19.50, vacancy from 4 to 7. So changing those two elements of the income approach for the property valuation, we arrived at the amended assessment proposed at $6,972,000 and $250. So just as a note, this value is 89% of the net sale value of 7.7. So being cognizant of the July the 1st, 2024 appraisal and other indicators of value, the amended value of $6,972,200 is determined to be a reasonable estimate of value based on the indicators of value summarized. So we just want to turn to page 33. Just a second, I need to drink a drink. And what you see at the top of page 33 is the only lease information I received in the complainant's disclosure specific to High River. And I'll speak to the other municipalities later, Okotoks and Calgary, but these were the only information, the only lease information I received from the complainant. They're in High River, but there's no specific address given, whether they're downtown or suburban. when we apply, like, we don't submit a lease study at a hearing like this, because we're not about to share all of the confidential information we receive from property owners. We receive that lease information from all property owners. We stratify it between the relative groups of properties, and we come up with typical values. So we're looking at all the lease information we get. We wouldn't just use 3. Like, we have more information than just 3 leases. So when we're looking at lease values, we look at all the lease information available to us. And we're very fortunate to be in that position as the assessors. We have the authority to reach out to the property owners, ask them for leases. And they know if they don't share that information with us, we can't ensure that their property assessment reflects this market in High River. If vacancy's higher, if lease rates are going down, we can reflect that. And if they don't share that with us, we can't make sure that's reflective in their assessment. With the lease information shared, we don't know what the quality of the lease is. Is it a pharmacy? Is it a store? Is it a doctor's office? Is it a dental office? Construction, leases on the main level of a building typically tend to be higher than the second story, or third, or fourth, or fifth. Lease rates will go down the higher the building. Not necessarily, but typically that's what happens. And the source of the information, I have this information that's received. Is it from the MLS? Is this from a study of some kind? I have no idea. So the credibility of the lease information, it's good information, and I could see it applying to some of the properties. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying relative to the subject property, I don't think it's relevant. And I'll get into that later. So I'll just skip the rest of it. So I want to, on page 35, we're going to talk about the summary of the lease rates used in the 2024 assessment of suburban properties. As we discussed on the map, where we are situated, the town office here, we're downtown, so everything west of that yellow line is considered downtown. So it has its own analysis, different lease rates, different cap rate, and other elements of the income calculation are a little different, whereas the subject property is in the suburban area. So I'll just read the bottom here regarding the determination of typical market leases in High River. As explained on page 17 of this submission, the appropriate approach to valuation of non-residential properties in High River is the income approach. To best determine typical lease rates, requests for information are requested to property leased, with the information being reviewed to determine typical rates and subsequently used in the annual assessment process. The following table is the guide to the range of typical lease rates we use in mass appraisal process, ensuring a consistent and equitable assessment. So on page 36, we've included our table. The part of this table specific to the subject property is in the middle. It's office. So main, $16 a square foot for average, $20 for good, $22 for excellent. I might also add that this is just a guide. It's not table driven. We don't put 16 in. Every property is at 16. Every average one is at 16. Every good one's at 20. Every excellent one is at 20, 22. Case in point, we've recommended an amended lease rate for the subject property at $19.50 when we call it an excellent building. So it's just a range. This is just a guide to help us make sure that we're consistent. Obviously, if I'm going to make an amendment, I can't say, well, I can't change it. It says 22, right? It's just a guide for us. So then let's turn to the next page. That's page 37. So we made an amendment to the lease rate for the subject property. So as a subject property is unique, specific to its size and quality within High River, the determination of appropriate lease rate is necessary. As shown below, the 2024 assessment lease rate is $20.50. That's what was used. This was based on the most recent RFI information provided by the property owner, which is at the top of the page. So so we did receive other responses back from the property owner in 2017, 2018, and the one in 2024. So to be reasonable and to try and arrive at a typical lease rate for this property, this property is unique in High River. As the complainant also said, most probably people are familiar with that building. A large building, one location with parking. It's a one of a kind. It's very unique in High River. So the lease rate that we use for that, it's important to make sure that it's specific to that property use, whether it's one property that sells, or whether it's one of 5. If there were 5 other properties in High River that were similar to the subject property, but this was the only information we had, then this is all the information we have. So in 2017, the lease rate per square foot, if you're using that calculation, is $19.23. In 2018, based on the monthly lease, the lease rate is $19.50. And based on the 2024 RFI, the lease rate is $20.77. So while this property is unique, upon review of the complaint, discussion with the complainant, and previous lease information shared with us, it seemed appropriate and reasonable to arrive at a typical lease rate for the subject based on the information we know that it was reported to us by the owner. To review all this information available for the building in much the same manner we'd use with a reasonable reasonable mindset. So on page 38, we summarized those lease rates, 1923, 1950, and 2077, to arrive at a median lease rate of 1950, which was used in the proposed amendment. And then, with regards to vacancy, we realized that we were looking at other office buildings in town. Some had vacancy of 7%. So to be cognizant of that and be consistent with the vacancy in High River, we changed the vacancy from 4 to 7%. And below, and I know it's small, but there's 2 properties down there. They're both at 7%, just to show you that those were properties that had 7% vacancy. So we made the appropriate adjustment. So those are the 2 elements of the income approach that we changed for the subject property to arrive and amend an assessment. So on page 39, we're sharing with you altogether, all the non-residential sales in High River, we had 17 for 3 years, from July 1, 21 to July 1, 2024. So some might say, wow, that's not very many. That's only 17 sales, but that's all we have. And these are the indicators of value we use and are audited to make sure that we are responsive to the High River market. So for commercial properties, similar to the subject property, we had 6 sales. One of the 6 was a converted residence. So I left it out of this, the ones included in the table. So there are 5 properties that sold. I'm not going to get into the detail too much. One of them, if you turn to the next page, you kind of flip back and forward here. So the first one is the Boston Pizza. That's at the top. The second one at 204 Center Street is the old Shoppers Drug Mart building in town, across from, it's right in front of the Ranchland mini mall kind of thing. The third one is the old Fitness Factory. The fourth one at the bottom is a store, it's like a parts store. And then the last one, it used to be a school, and it was bought now it's a daycare. So those are the commercial properties that we have. So let's take the restaurant as an example. So the area is 6,200 square feet, $25 a square foot for the lease. Potential gross income, we have a 3% vacancy, and then up cost to $8, 2% for non-recoverables, 2% for reserve for replacements. We arrive at a net income divided by the 7.25 cap rate, gives us our value. There is an additional value here because it's a large site for vacant land. So that's how that's kind of calculated. Now we're at this page, I want to make a note about a couple of things. The first one is including a property that's sold. Including a property that's sold that has an active lease. Now, there's an argument the complainant has shared with me that you can't use the sale of a building that has an active lease. And if you'll just turn back, it's in reference to the appraisal on page 29. Well, let's just stick with Boston Pizza. Sorry. So Boston Pizza is not owned by Boston Pizza. It was owned by, say, person A, and it sold to person B. The building is still leased to Boston Pizza. That building is quite fine to use as an indicator of value. There's nothing wrong with that sale. Just because the lease information we receive relative to all the buildings, well, we're asking for asking owners for information on who is leasing their building to a restaurant, to a franchise, a hotel even, whether it's because it's leased, it's a good sale. There's nothing wrong with sale. And I've even reviewed sales similar like with this to our audit, and there's nothing wrong with that sale. So this property sold, right? We have a transfer document here that has a property selling with a net sale of $7.7 million. Oh, sorry, we have an appraisal at $6,860,000.
On what page?
On page 29. So if that appraisal was based on the current lease, there's nothing wrong with that appraisal. And the sale with a net sale of 7.7, it's sold with Western Financial being a leasee. Just on page 30, it's just the same as Boston Pizza selling with an active lease. Because it's sold with a lease does not make that sale irrelevant. I have no information from anyone that will prove counter. There might be a difference of opinion based on, but if a property sells with a lease, it's a good sale. And just something else too with regards to the valuing buildings per square foot. I don't know if any of you have a calculator, but I just did some quick calculating while I was listening to the complainant submission. Let's take the sale at the bottom. It's at 27 11th Avenue Southeast. Sorry, we're on page 39. Sorry, I'm popping around here. Is everyone there? So on page 39, we have a store. It's 4,500 square feet. Leased for we have it assessed at $16 a square foot. Same kind of calculations as above. We have it at a cap rate at 7.25. That assessment is $880,883. You take that assessment divided by a square footage, $195 a square foot. The complainant is stating that this building, the Western Financial building, should be no more than $136 or $150 a square foot. These ones, I've the middle, well, the property at the bottom is $195, and the next one up is $183 a square foot. Using the value per square foot is not a comparable unit of comparison in High River. Like you can't say that overall because there's two sales at the bottom. The lower one's $195, and the next one up is $183. Generally speaking, you can't say that because it depends on the value of the building, the square footage, how many floors there is. These are one-story buildings. So I just want to make using the square foot as a reference to compare within a municipality at comparable properties. Fine and dandy, that's not a bad comparison, but you can't compare to the Nexus building downtown, which is multi-story, and a different municipality. As I said at the beginning, we're looking at comparable properties in High River. So that's the comparison we would use. So just just some thoughts to contemplate as we're presenting this information. So anyway, with the 5 sales we've used, using the cap rate of 7.25 and being cognizant of each of these properties that have sold, we arrive at an assessment to sales ratio for each of these 5 sales. It's on the column on the far right, range from 98% to 103%, the meeting quality standard for those sales. So that qualifies the cap rate used at 7.25. That cap rate is specific to High River, not Okotoks, not Calgary. And this is evidence that the cap rate of 7.25 is appropriate because it's proven by sales. It's developed by sales in High River. So I'll take you to page 41. So this shows the 17 sales overall for our non-residential property sales. Each of these red bars represents the assessment to sales ratio for each of those properties. So our median overall assessment to sales ratio for all of those groups is 98.5. So these sales met quality standard for audit, and so it passed. So as stated earlier, set out in the regulation, the statistical test is plus or minus 5%. In review of the sales from July 2021 through to June 30th, 2024, there were 17 non-residential properties that sold. Each of the red bars above represents the 2024 property assessment divided by the time-adjusted sale price, producing an assessment sales ratio. So we met the quality standard at 98.5%. So if you turn with me to page 42, that just shows the relationship of assessment to sales ratio and sales price. So it just shows the assessment is the median value of all of those properties. So some assessment will be higher than the selling price, some assessments will be lower than the selling price. That's the nature of mass appraisal. We're trying to make sure that the assessments reflect typical or the core value of all of those properties. And then the graph at the bottom shows the relationship between the assessment and the selling price. If you were to draw a straight line, it's not exactly straight. There's going to be properties higher or lower than the assessment, or ASRs, higher or lower than the assessment and sale price. Page 43 shows the quality standard that we passed to meet for the requirement for audit. And on page 44, just to do some summary of this information. So after a further review of the subject property with the complainant and a review of the market data used in the mass appraisal of the commercial properties specific to High River, the 2024 assessment of subject property was amended accordingly. So it went from $20.50 for the lease rate to $19.50, from 4 to 7% for the vacancy for our proposed amendment. So based on discussions with the complainant and further review of the market specific to the subject property, is the opinion of the assessor or the assessment department in High River, the 2024 assessment for subject property be confirmed as amended. So from $7,685,300 to $6,672,250. That's a reduction of $713,000 and change. The evidence as included in the submission to support this amendment value is as follows. Market data. We use lease rates specific to this property. Like I say, we have reported lease information from the property owner for 3 years with a median lease rate of $19.50, and it would be suggested that we would use $14 or $12.50 when the reported lease information from the property owner has a median of $19.50. This is evidence. We've used evidence to support the median lease rate of $19.50. That's factual data from the property owner. Vacancy has been amended to be cognizant of other properties, similar properties on High River. And the capitalization rate has been determined through market analysis and applied consistently to all the commercial properties. Not just the 5 that sold, but all the commercial properties in High River. So there is no market evidence to suggest that $14 or $12.50 is an appropriate value for the subject property. On page 45, I just want to go over some comparisons here. So we're proposing an amended assessment for the subject property at $6,972,250. That assessment is 88% of the value of the appraised value received from the owner in 2022 at $7,900,000. So 88% of that value. The amended assessment is about 102% of the appraisal provided to us from the complainant. And the amended assessment is 90% of the net sale of this property in 2022. So I just want to go to page 46. As there is sufficient evidence to support the amended 2024 assessment of the subject property, the review of any similar properties in municipalities included by the complainant was not considered to be required. And I should stress, the complainant would say he's not saying the properties in Calgary are the same as High River, yet he kept alluding that was the case. We can't compare values in High River to Calgary. If values in High River were higher than Calgary, and I went, wow, this property is worth way more in Calgary, I'm going to use Calgary data, and I'm going to put that on the assessment roll for people to pay taxes in High River. That would not be appropriate. So if it doesn't work both ways, it doesn't work. We don't look at Calgary. We're not required to look at Calgary and make sure our assessments reflect the supply and demand in Calgary. We don't know the lease rates. We don't know all the properties that sell. We don't know any of that. We have no knowledge. That's why the legislation states that we have to focus our energy and our valuation attention in High River. Not Okotoks. I've never used Okotoks. Okotoks would never use High River. We don't use Calgary suburban sales or Calgary downtown sales. So municipalities differ greatly in scope and scale. Okotoks and Calgary are much larger metropolitan areas, as such have larger populations and more diverse economies. The influence of supply and demand and their effects on each respective market vary greatly, and in no way could be considered parallel to High River without significant market research and adjustment, which is not included with the sales information shared by the complainant. I don't see it. Furthermore, more importantly, the process of assessment is heavily regulated by legislation and quality standards to ensure the consistent valuation standard across the province. Mass appraisal is a vehicle by which valuation is conducted in every respective defined market area in each municipality, which must meet the required quality standard and submitted to the province for audit and subsequent approval to be used for tax purposes. So the following is a simplified explanation of the process of mass appraisal and why select sales, whether within a municipality or from another, cannot be used without scrutiny. So on page 48, and I'll just present it this way. The table shows, say, assessment on the left and sale price on the bottom, and that black line represents the assessment. The blue circle would represent a sample of properties. So usually when we're talking to property owners during our inquiry period, oftentimes if they bought a property less than the assessment, less than the assessment, they'll come in going, hey, how come my property is so high? Well, we've looked at all these sales, and the median assessment, the assessment is calculated from the median representing the whole, and so they'll see that their sales, say in the blue circle, are the low sales. Because you can't have a median without having a high and a low. So the same goes for the lease rates, the same goes for the relationship to assessment and selling price. I'll just say finally at the bottom, assessors are responsible for the valuation of properties within their respective municipalities. However, we're not responsible for establishing equity between municipalities. So just to conclude, in our submission, we have shown that the assessment for the subject property is being determined appropriately through the income approach, based on market data specific to the subject property, while tying that value to the rest of the commercial properties through the consistent adjustments for vacancy, operating costs, and non-recoverable costs, and the cap rate. The amended assessment is fair and reasonable compared to the two appraisals and the sale of the property. So it is our position that the amended assessment of $6,972,250 be confirmed as the amended assessment for the subject property. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Just to confirm that number again, 6,972,200, 6,972,250?
Yeah, 250.
250? Okay, thank you. All right, turn it over to Mr. Iser for any questions.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to first address, obviously, all my questions through the board chair, of course, but I just, in addressing this, I want to start with the legislation. I just want to confirm that we're talking about the same thing, because I heard a number of points that appeared to contradict the legislation. So I just want to confirm through the board chair, of course, that in the present case, the complainant is not introducing the assessments of other property as a basis for reducing the assessment. Is that correct?
Can you repeat the question, please?
The complainant has not introduced the calculations of assessment from other municipalities as the basis for reducing the current assessment, correct?
I disagree. Because are you saying that from you or from me? From the chair.
So the complainant in their evidence has not introduced the assessment calculations from other jurisdictions as the basis for reducing the current assessment.
I'd say the complainant did. Because it's from Calgary. Through the chair, the sales used by the complainant, I heard it say a number of times, comparing suburban office at $136 a square foot to $150 a square foot from the city of Calgary, comparing that to High River. So there is a comparison made through the chair for Calgary, comparing Calgary to High River, and that's not appropriate. I don't agree with that.
Okay, I think maybe the respondent may have misunderstood my question.
Right.
I'll confirm maybe through another way of asking the question. Is the respondent aware of the difference between an assessment and a sale example?
The assessment is a result of a review of all the sales, depending upon how many sales are available in High River.
Okay. In terms of a data point, the sale or the rates per square foot that were referenced, those were market sale details, correct? By the complainant, not assessment figures?
I don't refer to properties as value per square foot.
That was not my question. My question is very clear. The rate per square foot that was included in the complaint's evidence relates to the sale price divided by the total area, not the assessed value of those properties. Is that correct?
We refer to them as assessment to sales ratios.
Mr. Iser, are you referring to your own evidence? Are you asking questions about your own submission, or are you asking questions about the respondent's submission?
I'm trying to
questions about the respondent's submission.
I couldn't agree more, Mr. Chairman. There's a lot of misinformation that the respondent has identified, and I just want to clarify that so that we have a clear understanding as to what the complainant submitted, what the rules are within the regulation, and what the data that the board is being asked to interpret.
Well, this is a chance to ask questions, and you can respond in rebuttal or in summary.
Sure, I can certainly do that.
I think that's probably better, just to question the respondent's submission at this point.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
So on page 48, the respondent has, under the sales from other municipalities, it states that the respondent is not responsible for establishing equity between municipalities. Equity refers to the level of assessment for each indicator. Is that correct?
no responsible for any part of assessment between municipalities.
I completely agree. And so we're also in agreement that the complainant has not introduced the level of assessment as a basis for reducing the subject property. Are we also agreed to that point?
Yeah, I'm not following here, Mr. Chair.
The complainant has
We're
not.
going back to the same question. You asked the question before, and you're going back to it again. You had stated in your submission that you were only including the assessments in there to show detail on the size of the properties and their level of finish, their quality.
Yeah, the quality or year
that's
of construction,
what you told
not the
us.
basis of the, correct. And the respondent's evidence appears to suggest that the sales information somehow relates to the portions of the legislation speaking to assessments in other jurisdictions, which I would state is categorically incorrect based on the legislation. So if I may, Mr. Chairman, if we can go to specifically section page 68.
Sorry, which page?
Page 68.
68 in R1?
Yes. Yes. And on page 68, section 293, sub 2. Where it says the assessor must not take into consideration assessments of similar property in the same municipality in which the properties are being assessed. And it speaks to not in other jurisdictions. You'd agree that it doesn't make any reference about market data, correct? Or indicators of value?
Where are we? What section of the Act are we looking at again? We're on page 68. Which section?
Yeah, under section 293.
Right.
Okay. So,
which
and maybe I'll back this up. So section 293 sub 2, and it talks about the assessor must take into considerations assessments of similar property in the same municipality in which the property is being located. That only refers to assessment information. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, in your evidence in R1, can you point me to a singular example of a main floor office that is assessed the same as the subject property?
Well, the subject property sold.
That's not my question. My question is there an assessment of a similar property with main floor office assessed the same as the subject?
Mr. Chairman, I've in our presentation we have stated the subject property is unique in High River. It's a one of a kind for sure, and the assessment's based on the lease rate provided by that building, and the sale price was certainly an indicator of value for that building, of which the assessment is 89% of that.
Okay. Not my question. My question was pretty straightforward. Can you please take me to the examples of similar property assessed the same as the subject in your evidence of R1? And if there isn't any, that's fine for an answer.
As I said, the subject property sold. There are no other properties like the subject property, but it is an indicator of value as far as the amended assessment is considered. So the building, the subject property sold. That can't be that can't be ignored.
It's sold with another property. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. In a different jurisdiction?
I've included the assessment of that property for information.
The assessment information from 2 years after the transaction?
Mr. Chairman, the transfer document was included with our submission showing the gross assessment and showing on the two properties, the subject property and the property in Tabor.
Okay. So if I can bring your attention to the transfer document on page 60, please.
Page 60?
Yes. Actually, I think it was page 60 is a repeat of page
30.
Page 30. So if we go to page 30, this is probably the best example of that. So on page 30, does it provide a price breakdown between each parcel?
No.
Are you familiar with MRAT?
Yes.
Matters relating to assessment and taxation regulation? And within MRAT, matters relating to assessment and taxation regulation, are you familiar with the requirements of the assessor to follow the Alberta Quality Ministers Guidelines?
I am.
And within the Alberta Quality Ministers Guidelines, are you familiar with the recording and reporting information guidelines that the assessor must follow when reporting indicators of value?
Yes.
Are you aware that when reporting indicators of value, transactions that involve multiple jurisdictions are excluded from any test for ratio studies by the province?
I've used this transfer document as an indicator of value. You'll note that this transaction was not included in our analysis.
Thank you. So when I bring your attention to page 20 for a moment,
I think
or page 21.
Mr. Eisner, if you're going to ask the question,
Sure.
you've got to allow a full answer. I think Mr.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like I said, when we're talking about this property, we used that sale as an indicator of value and showed how we would treat that objectively, looking at it at face value. So we didn't use it in the analysis for that reason, but it is an indicator of the value of the property relative to the property sold in Tabor with it.
Thank you. So, okay. So for the purposes of the assessment audit process, the sale was not used for how the municipality passed their audit. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And we don't have a breakdown of the purchase price based on the purchase and sale agreement that would have included both parcels. Is that correct?
We have the transfer document.
And the transfer document, does it break down the full purchase price between the two properties?
Usually, yes.
Sorry, where can you point me to that on the page as to where it does?
My experience with transfer documents, that it lists the property or properties that have sold and their price, right?
In your evidence, is there a breakdown between the purchase price between each parcel included?
I'm not aware of one. I have the transfer document.
Thank you. You have the transfer document on page 30.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mr.
and
Chairman,
on page 30, it does not break the price out for each parcel, does it not?
well, it looks that way, yes.
I
Okay.
think we get the point.
Okay, so I just want just to summarize, transactions that occur out in multiple jurisdictions are excluded by the Quality Ministers Guidelines, and specifically the reporting information guide required under the Quality Ministers Guidelines for any IOV, and there is no breakdown as required for any IOV indicator in the recording and reporting information guide or multiple parcel sales. That hasn't been provided in this document. Are those a correct statement of the facts?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to add that we look at transfer documents many times through the year, and they're not uncommon for non-residential properties that include multiple parcels. So we break down those parcels based on the information we have for each of those transfer documents. We don't seek the offer to purchase. We don't seek the minute details of all of the details of the transfer documents. It simply lists the property or properties included with the transfer. Lots of times they're condos with a condo suite, parking stall, and the storage unit. And we allocate those with evidence that we have to prove those values or a net value like we did with this. But transfer documents are not unusual, and we use them as face value. What's behind the transfer, or if other details are included, the lawyers are supposed to take care of this detail and ensure that it's specific to the property.
Mr. Chairman, this is not a response to my question. I'm just asking about the facts as they're borne out in the evidence that's here. Not about condos or condo allocations or parking stall units. We're talking about page 30 and only page 30. If the respondent could simply answer the question related to this property as this is what's in evidence.
Could you state that question again, please?
The facts are that there is no breakdown provided. The recording and reporting information guide specifically rejects transactions that occur in multiple jurisdictions. It also rejects where there is no breakdown between multiple parcels where the value isn't ascribed. Is that also correct?
I've accepted there's no breakdown of the property. I can see that. I'm just saying that transfer was used as an indicator of value.
Okay, I want to take you to your indicator of value on your audit. On page 20,
not
please.
for audit, but for our purposes of the amendment.
Okay, I think what we've established is that there's no breakdown on page 30. We have the document. That's what we have in front of us.
Thank you.
Sure.
I can bring your attention to page 20, please. So on page 20, there's two charts. There's a large number of dots. Specifically, would you agree that for the purposes of our discussion, our current assessed value is in excess of $2.5 million? Is that fair?
Yeah, say it again, please. Is that with reference to the diagram?
Yes. The assessed value of our subject is in excess of $2.5 million. Is that accurate?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. So if I'm looking at the top chart, and I just want to make sure I understand this, along the x-axis is the price of the sale price that was indicated on the land transfer document. Is that correct?
On the bottom, sale price. It says sale price, yeah.
So on the horizontal axis, I'll put it this way, horizontal axis, sale price is what is indicated from the sale document. Is that fair?
Correct.
And the dots represent where that price was relative to that horizontal axis. Is that fair?
Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to say here, the assessments are based on calculated using the income approach, using lease data. It's not just because there's very few sales and the higher over $5 million does not, to my opinion, if that's where the complaint is going with this, does not indicate that the valuation is incorrect because we don't have a cluster of sales.
Mr. Chairman, I haven't asked a question about that. If we could just stick to the questions that I'm attempting to ask here, it probably would go a lot faster, Mr. Chairman.
So long as the questions are direct questions on there, if they're simple to answer, then we'll get those simple answers. But
thank you.
Let's not try to make argument in a period of questioning.
And I'm certainly not trying to do that, Mr. Chairman. I'm simply just trying to understand the tables that are being presented here before us.
Okay.
So we have the purchase price on the bottom, and the ratio represents the assessment level above or below that purchase price by a factor of 10%, 20%, as it spreads out from 100. Is that correct?
I wouldn't refer to any numbers. It's a visual graph. I wouldn't know what that number is without looking at the math.
So on the left-hand side, 70, 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, 130, 140. 140 would be 40% higher than the purchase price, and 100 would be reflective of the sale price, and 70 would be 30% lower than the sale price. Is that not what this chart shows?
It represents a range, yes.
Okay, thank you. And then in the bottom chart, the level of assessment for those sale properties or transaction properties indicates the value of the assessment on the left-hand side and the purchase price on the horizontal axis. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So if we look at the furthest dot in the top chart, it appears to be close to the 100 line. So where the assessment and sale price would be similar. And we see on the bottom chart, that value is roughly $2.2 million. Is that a fair summary of the facts on that page?
I'm not going to be quoted on values. It's a graph to illustrate. It's an illustrative graph. I'm not going to speak to any numbers. All this graph represents is it's a range of value based on all of the sales that we use in our analysis and subjected to asset which has been approved for audit.
Okay. Now, the number of sales that are indicated here are indicated by the red dots. Is that correct?
Can you repeat the question, please?
The red dots reflect sales. Is that correct?
The red dots represent, well, the assessment to sales ratio. Right, that's what they represent. The bottom one. Well,
Do they not represent
the bottom one?
properties that
Sorry,
have
the
sold?
bottom one. The bottom graph is the. Yes, I believe it's the assessment to sales ratios compared to the assessment and sale price.
Okay, so the red dots represent indicators of value or transactions. Is that fair?
Yes, the assessment divided by the selling price. Yes.
Okay. Now, you've indicated that there are only 17 transactions of non-residential property in the municipality over the last 3 years. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so obviously the number of dots here go beyond 17 indicators of value. Is it fair to say that this also includes all of the residential transactions that have occurred?
Mr. Chairman, I think the most appropriate graph for the complainant to be looking at is on page, let me see, I gotta find it here. On page 42 would be the appropriate graph to look at for non-residential properties. Because the complaint's correct. That one does contain all the residential properties. So the one specific to the non-residential properties is on page 42 of my submission.
I think we'll certainly get to page 42. My questions are still pertaining to page 20. So on page 20, the information that's included on these charts is heavily skewed by the residential transactions. Is that correct?
On page
As
20,
they outnumber. Go ahead.
on page 20, that's all of the sales. Includes residential sales on page
Okay,
20.
thank you.
But that's, I know where he's going with this.
All right, we've established, so page 22 deals with all residential, all sales in High River. Page 40 and page 42 deals with the non-residential sales.
Correct.
That's what we're saying.
Correct,
I
Mr. Chairman,
think
yes.
we can perhaps shortchange things here.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I wanted to address, Mr. Chairman. So thank you.
Okay.
Now, when I look at page 42, and we're only focusing on the non-residential sales, now the 95 to 105, that is the range that is outlined within the assessment regulations for where the sale price properties must have their assessments be within the ASR of 0.95 to 1.05. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you. And does this identify how many suburban office transactions were used in, or that transacted in the municipality?
This graph represents all of the 17 non-residential sales, of which 6 of them were five were used in the cap rate study for the commercial properties.
Okay, so this also includes industrial property as well. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so that would take us to, and the downtown properties. And so if we turn to page 39,
Mr. Chairman?
that is the sale properties. Is that correct? That have been analyzed?
Just as a note, there are several models that we used in our analysis. There's this includes, let me see here, I had it written down here. Res, so the commercial, industrial properties altogether for the respective models.
Okay, so I just want to move to page 39, which is, I think, what we have up on the board here. And so then from that list of sales, only these 5 have been analyzed for the purposes of your income producing properties. Is that fair?
These were used for the determination of the appropriate cap rate.
Okay. Now, are any of these suburban offices?
Pardon me?
Are any of these suburban offices?
No, they weren't.
Okay, thank you. Now, you mentioned that the example of 227 11th Avenue Southeast as being $191 a square foot. That's a retail property. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And 339 3rd Avenue is also a retail property. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And 1508 13th Avenue, that's a franchise restaurant. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, when we were on page 39, and sorry, when we were on page 39, we were looking at these properties. Would you agree that our subject property is, I believe it's roughly 30,000 square feet? Is that accurate?
That's correct.
And the sample size of the entire sale examples here on page 39 is less than 30,000 square feet. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Now, it was indicated that values were applied typically. There's a requirement within the legislation. I'll bring your attention to that. If I can bring your attention to page 12, please. So this is the legislative authority for valuation of property identified in your submission. It says that property assessments represent, and it provides several bullets here. And I just want to confirm that we're both in agreement that the assessment must represent the fee simple ownership of the property. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And must reflect typical market conditions. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. And if we turn to page 13, under MRAT Section 5, that the assessment be prepared using mass appraisal principles. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, mass appraisal is defined on page 13 as preparing assessments for a group of properties using standard methods and common data. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay. And under Section 5 of MRAT, it also must reflect the typical market conditions for properties similar to that property. And so a subject property is considered an office. Is that correct?
I'd say that's correct. It depends how many properties you have to consider too.
And so for the group of properties, so in order to prepare assessments for a group of properties using standard methods and common data, is there an example? This is the chart that you've included to illustrate that point, which is on page 36. Is that correct?
Could you ask a question again, please, through the chair?
So your typical lease rates is an example of providing what your groups of just so I'm quoting this properly, a group of properties using standard methods and common data, and the common data that you're using would derive these values on page 36.
Mr. Chairman, I've used, just referred to the table as describing typical lease rates, and the subject property is determined from using actual lease rates. So this table is just a guide. We don't have, this is not Calgary, we don't have, of course, we don't have multiple properties equal to the subject. Of course, that's true, but we've used the best information I have access to. We can't make them up. Thank you, Chair.
I'm not suggesting that you're making things up. So the yellow is highlighted and it shows a main an office and then main $16, $20, and $22. Is that correct?
That's a store. We're talking office main, 16 for average, 20 for good, 22 for excellent.
Okay. And then if we looked at like a large store, for example, the rate would be for an average quality would be 11, a good quality 14, and excellent quality 16. Is that how I would interpret this?
This is being a bit simplified. We're talking about the lease rate for this specific building type too. This is just a range of typical leases for the building for the leases used.
Okay. And it says these are the typical leases specific to the suburban group of properties were determined as follows, right? That's what it says. And it says that it provides the foundation and framework which the valuation of non-residential properties is determined, thus ensuring consistency and equity between similar properties. Is that not what it says on this page?
It's like I said, it represents a range. Obviously, we've used 1950 for the subject, so it's a range. It's not black and white.
Where does it indicate that it's a range on this page? Page 36.
I don't understand the question.
Where does it state that it's a range of values on page 36?
Well, we use it as a range, right? That's what we use it for assessment purposes. It's a range of value. This is a guide. It's not an official lease rate schedule. It's our guide. It was just, and this was just included. This was just included in a discussion of the properties that sold, just to show the lease rate that was used.
To simplify things here, are you suggesting to the respondent that this is the range is that it's from 16 to 22? Is that what you're saying? Is that why you're using the word range?
Yeah, I suppose that's correct. Yes.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Iser?
No, quite frankly. It's from the evidence that's been presented here on page 36, there's nothing that suggests that it's a range or a guide. It says quite specifically that this is the forms the foundation and framework with the valuation of non-residential properties, thus ensuring consistency, equity with similar properties. It also states at the very top that it's the typical lease rates that are applied. So and maybe I'm misunderstanding this, but if you have a space that is considered good, it would be at a rate that is identified under the good column based on that property type. Is that not what this page shows or illustrates?
I'm not quite sure. Maybe I'm inappropriate for asking this, but we've already been audited by the province, right? Like what we're talking about here, I'm not quite sure where we're going with this, but we've been audited by the province and shows that the assessments are appropriate. Certainly for the sales that we used. Is this an audit process, or I'm not quite sure what this is all about, Mr. Chair? Like, we use this table as a range. We've said it's between $16 and $22. Obviously, it can shift between the two, and oftentimes properties that will be good, and as the lease rate increases, we may change it to excellent. We might not always change the label. The labels are strictly a guide that we use to stratify the properties. They're not black and white. It could be a good property and it could be $21 or it could be $22, and maybe we forgot to change the label, but the lease rate is what we specifically use for the assessment.
Okay, thank you. I think that answers my question. So if I can bring your attention back to page 13, please.
Which one?
To what page?
What page, please?
Page 13.
13.
And I just want to confirm that the definition of valuation model is the same thing that we're talking about here, which is the relationship between the property characteristics and their value in the real estate marketplace using a mass appraisal process. Are we agreed to that's what the definition of a valuation model is?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Now on page 17, it talks about the typical steps of the income approach to valuation. And under market data, it talks about comparable sales and lease rates. The lease rates and the market data that was analyzing those lease rates is what went into determining the rates that are found on page 36. Is that correct?
Yeah, the lease rates are determined. We receive the lease information from each respective property type and determine a median rate based on leases received.
Okay, and that median rate, I'm just trying to understand this, because there hasn't been a leasing study provided to demonstrate how the subject was assessed at either $20.50 or $19.50. So, and we agree that the valuation process or the valuation model is supposed to be based on mass appraisal. We agree that the assessment is to reflect the fee simple estate value. So in your evidence, was a study included to demonstrate how we get to, based on other comparable properties, to 1950?
First off, this table on page 36 is not a lease study. It's just a general guide that we've provided that we use as a foundation or a starting point or a level of consistency between properties. And the $19.50, we shared how we arrived at that with information provided to us by the property owner for the subject property owner.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I'm going to touch on that in a second. Was this chart or these rates, was this determined by the town of High River, or was this determined by a third party?
Well, we did this in High River. Yes, we've had a ratio. We've had a study done, but it's outdated now.
Okay. Thank you. And so I want to take your attention to page 38, please. So on page 38, it was determined or acknowledged by the municipality that the current assessment wasn't prepared based on typical market value, and that's why the actual vacancy was changed from 4% to 7%. Is that correct?
Can you repeat the question, please?
So the respondent has acknowledged in their materials that the current assessment of $7.68 million was not prepared using mass appraisal, which is why the vacancy was adjusted from 4% to 7%. Is that correct?
No, that's incorrect. The lease information is specific to the property, mass appraisal, and all the other elements of the assessment income approach. Vacancy, operating costs, and the cap rate that's applied to the subject property is the same cap rate used for all the other commercial properties. So that it's not, there's not a separate cap rate or for the subject property. It's included with all the other commercial properties. That's the process.
The question wasn't about the cap rate, was not about the lease. My question was about the vacancy rate. So in the assessment,
it was about mass appraisal.
I think
I will repeat the question for the purposes of the record. The assessment, the current assessment, utilizes a vacancy rate of 4%. It's acknowledged on page 38 that the vacancy rate is being changed from 4% to 7%, being cognizant of the process of mass appraisal. Is it fair then to say that the vacancy rate that was applied in the initial assessment did not adhere to the mass appraisal process?
It can be a yes or no answer, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it was made with the view of treating all equal properties the same.
Thank you. So as you've stated, the vacancy rate is determined on a mass appraisal process. The operating costs are based on mass appraisal process. The vacancy is now under the new value that's reduced from the initial value is based on a mass appraisal process. The operating costs are based on a mass appraisal process. And the capitalization rate is also based on a mass appraisal process. Is that correct?
Correct.
And the lease rate that's being assigned is based on a site-specific basis. Is that correct?
the subject property happens to be a unique property in town. And we've tried to use rationale to adjust the lease, to make an amendment to the lease rate.
Okay. And so the rationale in this case is to look at the step-up rates since the lease was signed in 2006 to arrive at the proposed value of 1950. Is that correct?
Can you repeat that again, please?
So the 1950 is the median value of the step-up rates between the 2006 lease and now. Is that correct?
You said 2006? I'm using 2017, 2018, 2024.
Okay. I'm looking at your chart on page 38. It has a median of 1950.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And the original lease term of 2006 with the step-up rates all the way to the end of the lease, which occurs in 2028. Does the 1950 come from that table?
Yes.
Okay. And so that is a review of the site-specific lease in place, or also known as the leased fee estate. Is that correct?
We touched on that lease before. There's nothing wrong with the lease in this property. Like it's, so repeat the question, please.
In analyzing only the subject lease, based on their original lease from 2006 until it expires in 2028, and using the step-ups, is that not reviewing the lease on a site-specific basis or a leased fee estate?
We have stated this is a unique building, and that we've assessed it accordingly with the information provided specific to that building.
Okay. In the legislation, is there anything that supports the use of a leased fee estate in the valuation of property for assessment purposes?
It's not in legislation.
Thank you. As we covered earlier, the legislation is clear about utilizing the fee simple estate. Is that correct?
I actually checked this with Mr. Chairman, I actually checked this with our auditor, and I mentioned it with the Boston Pizza sale.
Mr. Chairman, none of that is in evidence. If we could just stick to what the legislation speaks to.
With reason, Mr. Iser, that you also have a rebuttal on here. It's I don't know, are we dealing with rebuttal or are we dealing with?
No.
I know we're dealing with questioning, but within reason. I mean, what's there is there.
Okay, thank you. I can move on. In the comments that are made, if I can bring your attention to page, sorry, I think it might still be on page 38. Just a second. No. On page 40, oh, sorry. If I can bring your attention to page 32, please. And the bottom of the page, actually at the top of the page, sorry, refers to the July 1st, 2024 appraised value of $6.86 million. And at the bottom of the page on page 32, it talks about the proposed amendment for the 2024 assessment being cognizant of the 2024 appraisal. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Can I bring your attention to page 29, which is the appraisal that's provided on page 29? Now there's a red box, and directly under the red box, can you read the first sentence, please?
Oh, you can read it to me.
The property rights appraised are those of the least fee interest.
Mr.
Is
Chair,
that not what the appraisal is based on?
Yeah, I disagree with the complainant's argument. Let's just leave it at that. I don't see the relevance of most properties that sell with a lease, has no impact. Like the Boston
It's
Pizza
not my
sale,
question.
it's all with a lease. It's common.
Good. Mr. Chairman, I'm not asking questions about the Boston Pizza sale. I'm just asking about the appraisal that's been put in evidence and the basis for the appraisal of which the respondent is making their proposed value on. And the rules within the regulation which refer to the fee simple estate value, and we're referring to an appraisal throughout this evidence, or the information within the evidence is all based on the lease fee interest of the subject property. So I'm just trying to clarify that the respondent's entire basis for their change is on the lease fee interest appraisal from July of 2024.
That's not true. 3 indicators of value and the lease rate per square foot. It's not the only thing. I'm just saying it was in the range of value that the property was appraised, that to 6.8 received from the company.
Can I bring your attention to page 34, please? Above the table, it says upon review of the information, and it refers back to the appraised value of the subject at 6.8. Again, we've acknowledged that the appraisal of 6.8 is based on the lease fee interest. The table purports to use $14 as a rate and then come up with a cap rate to arrive at that value. But if the lease fee interest is what was being valued, is that not based on the subject lease?
Yeah, at 1950.
Okay. Now, have you reviewed the lease of the subject property?
I'm just using the lease information they reported in the RFI. I don't ask for details, specific details about leases.
Are you aware that the subject, where the landlord is required to provide them up to $4 a square foot for repairs on the property annually?
I'm also aware that the
under
property
clause
owner
5A.
I'm also aware that the property owner said the property was worth $7.9 million as well.
Under a lease fee interest, correct?
I'm not aware of the details of the lease.
Thank you. So the respondent's not aware of the details of the lease, not aware of the details of the transfer of property, and not aware of the details of the appraisal. Do I understand that correctly?
Actually, Mr. Chairman, I did ask the complainant for the details of the appraisal, for the rest of the narrative appraisal, and he refused to share it with me. If he's asking me for details specific to the property, I have asked for them, and he hasn't provided them, just as a note. I know it's not on record.
Sorry.
Actually, did have an email.
Is any of this in evidence in front of us? We don't have anything more than, from what I've seen of the appraisal, we have just the cover page. Is that correct?
That's a question directed to the respondent, correct?
Well, that's fine.
Yeah.
I think the respondent said that he was looking for those details as well, or did you get more than the cover page on there?
Well, just referring to the sale, the appraisal at 6.8, I did ask for the full narrative appraisal,
and you didn't receive
it wasn't shared with me. No.
Okay, so it was not shared. Okay, fair enough. And
Avison.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Yep. And I would clarify, Avison Young holds the rights to that appraisal to release that. Is that correct?
I would assume so. That's you had the appraisal, and not me.
And I don't work for Avison Young. We agreed to that.
It was just a statement, Chair.
We're not really getting anywhere here. We understand that we have what we have is the front cover page of that, giving the summary, giving the value, and that's what we have, and that's what this board will work on the evidence that's being provided to it when we deliberate. I don't think there's any point in asking for what's not here.
Thank you. If we turn to, and lastly, I just want to deal with page 44 here for a moment. So on page 44, It states that through the mass appraisal process, the amended 2024 assessment for the subject has been prepared using consistent methodology and with the local market data specific to the property. To confirm, the consistent methodology only applies to the vacancy rate, the operating cost, the non-recoverable, and the cap rate. Is that correct?
For being cognizant of the mass appraisal process and other commercial properties, that would be correct.
Okay. And as was stated, what is inconsistent with that is how the lease rate was derived for the subject property in that process. Is that fair?
Yeah, ask the question again, please.
So where it states that the 2024 assessment for the subject property has been prepared using consistent methodology and with the local data specific to the property, the rental rate is not consistent with mass appraisal process or the consistent methodology. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, it's being alluded that I find that we're chasing sales, that we're using one sale to arrive at an assessment for the only property that's sold in town. It's a unique property. We've tried to use a median process in it. Obviously it's the only property in town, the only property that's leased, and that's what we have. Like I said, we're not going to use $14 where they're reporting a higher lease rate. So we've just used what has been provided to us. It could be one of 5, it could be one of 20, but that's the only information we have. It does not negate that information for this property. That's my answer.
Okay, I think we could spend all day going over methodology back and forth. Really, what's in front of us here is the assessed value at on the roll of 7.685 and the new the assessor recommendation number of 6.972, and whether the evidence on a balanced probability tilts us one way or the other. So
sure, thank you, Mr.
methodology that's gone into it, we understand that we're dealing with what we have here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just trying to determine if we have any other questions, because I think most of everything has been answered. So, Mr. Chairman, or again, lastly, through the board chair, of course, on page 27, the respondent, it was noted that through the rental information for High River, that information was not like it was well, there was leases from High River shared in the complaint submission. There's no sales related to the capitalization rate. Oh, sorry, I think I'm in the wrong spot here. There was a question I had about the leases. 1 second. Sorry, everybody, I'm just trying to find the page that I was referring to. Yes, sorry. Page 34, please. Now, the source of the office lease information provided. So the comment here in the respondent's materials says the lease information provided by the complainant is quoted as being provided by Avis and Young with no reference to the actual source of data, MLS, etc. the source of the data is provided as being Avis and Young, correct?
It was in the appraisal. Yeah.
And so for the purposes of the information, the respondent hasn't provided any leases by contrast outside of the subject from 2006. Is that correct?
It is specific to the subject property. It is unique in High River.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your patience.
All right. Look at the time here. We're at 4:41. We've certainly been burning through the time here. We have not got to. There may be some questions from the board as well, and we've got a rebuttal submission, and we've got a question about the rebuttal from the respondent, and also the response on that. So how are we doing on time? And summaries as well too. So we can do, depends upon individuals here as to what kind of time we've got this facility for, how long we can keep people here, whether people have other places that they're headed off to after 5 o'clock, or whether we need to adjourn and then come back to finish off. So, to the, I'll ask the, first of all, I'll ask the complainant, how long do you think we're going to need to, for rebuttal and to go through your submission in response to the objection to the rebuttal and to summary?
I think, Mr. Chairman, that just given kind of where we're at with the time, it might be better to reconvene. Quite simply because I think Mr. Dalrymple probably has their argument to make, and then certainly our argument on that. I think it will take much longer than the 17 minutes that we have left to kind of go through that.
I'm not suggesting I'm not suggesting 17 minutes necessarily. We may, we could push.
No,
we could push
sure.
longer, but we don't want to burn everybody out at the same time, and it's not necessarily doing anybody any favors to. I've seen many hearings where people have tried to just to power through to the end, and it's not necessarily best for either party really, or for the board.
And I tend to agree
to the material. So I'm open to suggestions on how we can get through it, whether we want to carry on a little bit longer, but it kind of looks a bit doubtful the way we've been moving along here that we're going to get through everything today.
I think that's a very accurate statement. I think that there's probably just with the time, with where the time is, and where with the preliminary issues on the rebuttal, the response to that, time for the board to make those decisions and then go through that in the event, depending on how that plays out, as well as summaries. We probably were looking at around 2 hours. It might be better to reschedule or reconvene to a different date, if that makes sense.
Okay, I'll ask the respondent now. What's your position on this?
I'll leave that for your judgment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so you're good either way with that. I don't like the idea of pushing people so that everybody feels that they're compressed and they've got to be really quick with what they're saying on there. I'd like people to have the opportunity to make a fulsome summary at the end, and also to be able to provide their submissions as they would like to do so. I don't have a concern about adjourning this and picking up on another day, but we've got to first of all make sure that we've got this facility available to us. There's a number of balls in the air here. It's a matter of the schedules for most importantly for the complainant and the respondent, that they're available to be here. Secondly, that the facility is available, and also that it doesn't conflict with other times for the board members, because now we're seized with this. We can't bring in another panel halfway through. So we'd like to get this done as quickly as possible. It doesn't do anybody any good to be adjourning this for a month or so. We need to do this while we're fresh. So the question is, can we do this next week to move along there? I can tell you that I do have hearings that I'm set up for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I have Monday and Friday available. I can't speak for my colleagues, and I don't know when this facility is available, and I don't know what works. I would be more than happy to come back on Monday and finish this off, and we'll have a chance to have a good.
Council meet.
There's no council meeting this Monday.
Yeah. Chances are good that the facility is available Monday, but I can't even confirm. I need to confirm that with our counterpart that we share the public.
Okay, so it could be another, somebody else using the facility. Mr. Izard, what's your availability?
I'm just checking. Monday is a little difficult for me because I have another hearing, but it's not a long one. It's pretty short. And I'm just trying to check the time on it because I can't remember if it's a 1 o'clock start. Yeah, it is a 1 o'clock start. So I can certainly do Monday morning at 9 a.m. if that works, or potentially I could do Wednesday or Friday.
Okay, how about panel members?
Monday morning works,
Monday morning.
and Wednesday works for me too.
Okay, Wednesday I am tied up in another hearing, so at least at this point. So Wednesday I cannot make it, but Monday morning we could. Mr. Dalrymple, you're nodding.
Yeah, Monday would work for me.
So Monday morning, okay. So I don't want to get into this and find that we're short on time again, but I would think that probably would 2 hours do us if we started at 9 o'clock? Hopefully.
Yeah, I think so. Even worst case, I think we'd be done before noon. So
These are the things about scheduling CARB hearings that I've always found that it's safe to schedule them for a day, and you never know. The ones that you think are going to go long, that are going to go really long, they're done in half an hour, and the other ones that you don't think it's going to take that long, they end up going a long time. And Mr. Izard, I'm sure you'd know that as well too.
I know that pretty well. Yeah.
You never know these things for sure. You've tried to make your best guess on it, but I suppose we should have maybe had a full day, started at 9 a.m., but we didn't. So can we? I think probably maybe we should have any board questions before we break, and then we can reconvene Monday morning. Well, subject to the availability of the space as well, too, right? We could always reconvene on Teams.
If you just want to do it through Teams, we have a way to also stream it.
Yeah, if it's not a requirement that everybody be in person in this room, we could absolutely support a virtual hearing where all members just receive a team link similar to how Mr. Izard has joined us today.
And that might be just as good, and then we don't have to worry about the facility. Done many hearings in different jurisdictions. One of the nice things about the electronic world that we're in is that we can be in Lethbridge today, and tomorrow we're in Grand Prairie, and who knows where. We can just jump from one place to another. And most of the time, the technology works really well for us. So we just all be a series of boxes on the screen, but I think we could do that just fine. Okay? Does that sound like a plan?
Sounds like a plan.
Then we'll come back and we'll be fresh. We'd just we'd come back. We'd get a link, and we'd all sign in on Monday morning? Start at 9 o'clock?
Yeah.
Okay, let's just see if we've got any questions here from the panel before we head off. Any?
I have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am wondering, I saw somewhere that I'm trying to locate now, that the square footage changed. I believe it was on the 2017 RFI. The square footage of the property on the 2017 RFI came in above the 30,000 square feet. So I'm wondering if any part of this parcel or this building is sublet.
Sorry, could you repeat the question? Sorry.
On the 2017 RFI, it looks like an example that has been taken from the RFI submitted from property owner, I'm assuming, but the square footage value is different.
Oh, it's true. Yeah, it's 30,427.
Correct.
Yeah, and I tried to access the building plans, and I couldn't do that. And they kept referring to 30,000 square feet. Sometimes it's just the net square footage. Sometimes foyers or something like that can be taken out. I don't know. Yeah, I was going to look into that. I was having trouble finding the plans. Good question.
Okay. Just to confirm that, are there any parts of this building that are sublet to any other leasee?
No, it's all used exclusively for the one leasee.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So this facility's always been demised as it's demised as a single tenant facility. So all 30,000 square feet are.
Yeah, that's
One
right.
lease.
It's correct.
And that's a long-term lease now. That's on till November 28. Or, well, it's not necessarily long-term. Here we are just about the end of 2025. So
Right. Yeah.
sounds like it's so far in the future, but it's really not that far in the future. All right. And is the subject coded as a? I understand it's a unique building in High River. It's coded as excellent, or what's the quality on there? I think the assessment said it's excellent. Yeah. Okay.
That's correct. We coded it as excellent.
Okay, so it's excellent. The other leases of, so you get RFE returns each year from tenancies throughout High River. There were no other office leases at all, or you chose to base it on the subject actuals because it's unique, because it's much larger than anything else, I'm assuming?
We did obtain some of the office leases. There's not a lot, but we do have some office leases in town. I can't provide those because they were different size of building than the subject property.
So would there be consideration for economies of scale in there?
I don't have that calculation, no.
Okay.
We've just...
All right. So going back to your table that we've gone to many times, the page 36. So if it was excellent, it by this table it should have been at 22 a foot. It was at 2050 a foot, and you're proposing that it should be at 1950 a foot. And that basis for that is, again, the three RFE returns from different years. You've just taken a median of the three of them?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Okay, I think I understand about as much as I'm going to understand, or I'm as smart as I'm going to be at this point at just before 5 o'clock on Friday afternoon. I think it's probably good for us to have a good weekend, and we'll close it off here. We'll adjourn. It's 4:56. We'll adjourn the hearing at this point, and we will pick up again on at 9 o'clock on Monday morning.